IB Nation, what up? Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is a Monday afternoon, so you know that's a Notre Dame recruiting hour, recapping all the madness that was Junior Day over the weekend. Had some of the top 2024 targets on the board for Notre Dame that were on campus, as well as all 7 current commits in the 2024 class. Of course, I'm Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at IrishBreakdown.com, joined by Sean Davis, recruiting analyst here at the site as well. Sean, I know we were just talking before we started, man. A busy weekend. We'll talk a lot about the players that were on campus, how their weekends went, the event in general, which I thought the staff did a tremendous job putting on. But, it's been a hectic weekend, man. I'm excited to get into this recruiting talk with you, though, brother.
Man, it kind of got hectic right after we did last week's show, right?
Yeah.
Because Tuesday is the day I went to see Justin Scott, and then everything started building up towards Junior Day. And then the weekend was just crazy. So I agree totally. But, we love it. That's why we're here.
Yeah, man. I mean, last week we are recapping. Last week we recapped the All-Star Game circuit, and now we're just into 2024. It's like full speed ahead, which is funny. I know you just mentioned Justin Scott, top 2024 defensive tackle target out of St. Ignatius in Chicago, Illinois. I'm sure there will be some questions about that in the chat at some point, and we will for sure hit that on the mailbag during the second section. But we really want to make this first part of the podcast about the recruits that were just on campus for Junior Day. So, Sean, I want to talk about the format here of what we saw on Junior Day first, because I thought it was really interesting. And I talked to someone pretty close to the situation just about where these ideas come from, because you know how recruiting is, man. Now it needs to be fun, right? Like these kids need to be entertained. They need to have a good old time. So some of the stuff that they did at recruiting day on Saturday at Notre Dame is, they do the typical stuff, campus tours, talking to coaches. They do all that stuff, sure.
Right.
They went to the hockey game later at night. That's a pretty typical thing. But one thing that was pretty funny that you saw at the beginning of the day, because people were rolling up, pretty early in the morning, and Chad Bowden, who's the director of recruiting at Notre Dame, for people that don't know, and the rest of his recruiting staff, the support staff there, are all dressed up like secret agents. I don't know if you saw that, Sean. I'm sure you did, which was hysterical.
Yeah.
So they had the blazers on, they had the dark glasses, they had the little earpiece, and one by one, as these cars were coming forward, they would stop them, check the car, get the kids out of the car, frisk them, like do all this type of stuff before they were allowed to kind of move forward and stuff. And I talked to a bunch of the recruits about this, and most of them were just kind of like, I had no idea what was happening when this first happened. They're like, what's going on? I forget who it was. I think might have been Jack Larson who told me Cam Williams was the first one in line. And so they did the thing to Cam's car, and Jack had no idea what was happening. He's like, I thought someone was like stealing someone's car for a second or something. I'm like, what is happening right now? Like no one knew what was happening. And, but from a full scope, it was everyone that I talked to pretty much thought it was hysterical. Like they really thought it was playful, it was fun, it was humorous. So I actually talked to someone, again, kind of close to the situation to ask, like, where did this idea come from? So they did it last year for Junior Day as well. Where this kind of came from, though, was this was something that Chad Bowden, who came from the University of Cincinnati, who, for people that don't know, and a couple of the recruiting staff also came from the Bearcat program. Apparently, Sean, they used to do this with the Bearcats, and kids just loved it. They liked it in the first year at Notre Dame, so they continue to kind of do it. And again, I think it's kind of playful. I think it's fun. Obviously, it was a good laugh to start the day, because the one thing is that when you're coming early in the morning with like 16 and 17-year-olds, right, it can take a little time to kind of ease the kids into it, because they're tired. They need to get into the flow, all that type of stuff. Yeah. I feel like it was kind of a shock to the system for a second, like, hey man, it's go time here. We're about to have some fun, right? And it's a cool day. So I really just want to start this podcast by just kind of laying out some of the things that they did at the Junior Day. But again, I think that it speaks volumes to the Notre Dame recruiting staff, though, for a second, because they do a great job of keeping all the recruits on campus really involved, really engaged, kind of get them really comfortable quickly. So it was a fun weekend, though, man. I thought that they did a really great job just from a staff perspective of putting on this Junior Day personally.
Well, I think not even just yesterday, just overall, what Chad Bowden does as a representative and ambassador of Notre Dame recruiting is remarkable. Creative, witty, cutting edge and willing to take a chance, right? The thing he did in the airport with the recruits, he's just willing to take a chance. And that causes the rest of the crew and the rest of the class to be engaging with one another. You kind of have to break the ice anytime you bring people together from all walks of life. And Chad Bowden and the staff, they do a great job of breaking the ice and making things comfortable. And I think when we talk about these young men, that's going to be a common thread, right? Like comfort. It was just a different atmosphere, and it caused them to be able to enjoy themselves. And I think Chad Bowden continues to do that, even with the 23 class. He's continuing to do it with the 24 class, starting with this junior day this past weekend. So at this point, it's par for the course for what
Yep.
Chad Bowden has meant to Notre Dame in their recruiting efforts.
So before we get into some of the uncommitted prospects here, Sean, that were on campus in Notre Dame, because I agree completely, man. I think the comfort is the biggest thing for me as far as the format of these junior days, because just want people to also know this was a little bit more of an intimate junior day. You know, I think they had a total of 17 players on campus, and they wanted to keep the numbers a little lighter for this one because they're going to have another junior day opportunity after this, right? So there's going to be more opportunities for players to get on campus, a little bit more of a larger group setting. This one was more about direct contact to coaches being able to sit down with players. And we'll get into a few of the updates as far as how some of the uncommitted players really meshed with the coaches on campus and had an opportunity to watch film and all that great stuff. But really want to throw out the 7 recruits, though, Sean, and 7 commits in the class, because I think it's huge, man. It's huge. I expect them to be on campus a lot throughout the spring and summer, at least especially the local guys. But you had all 7 commits in the 2024 class, who are, of course, CJ Carr out of Saline High School in the state of Michigan, quarterback, running back Aeneas Williams out of the state of Missouri, Hannibal High School, all-time great already in the state of Missouri as far as the numbers he's putting up. You had Cam Williams, who, I mean, if you want to tell me CJ Carr is the best recruiter in that class, I would listen to you. But if you told me it was Cam Williams out of Glenbard South High School, wide receiver in the state of Illinois, that he was the most, engaged recruiter in the class, I would 100% listen to your argument, man, because he does a tremendous job with the uncommitted guys on campus. Jack Larson, tight end out of Charlotte Catholic in North Carolina, was on campus as well. You also had Peter Jones out of Malvern Prep in Pennsylvania on campus. Owen Wafel out of Hun School here in Princeton, New Jersey was on campus. And Carson Hobbs, cornerback out of Archbishop Moeller in the state of Ohio. So, Sean, I think it was big, though, man, having 7 commits, all of them on campus. And you know what's a little bit different about this, though, Sean, is when you hear that all 7 are on campus, you expect them to be the main recruiter, to really talk to all these uncommitted players.
Yeah.
That wasn't 100% the vibe this weekend. They talked to them. I mean, I talked to Cam Williams, for instance, and he was like, honestly, like we didn't spend a lot of time with the uncommitted guys. It was more about committed guys, keep growing your bonds. And then the uncommitted guys got a lot more of an intimate kind of relationship with the coaches. They got to sit down with them and really spend a lot of time with them. So this was more about coaches and recruits environments than it was about committed to uncommitted player environment. But you saw those 7 guys that were able to really bond, which was tremendous. There was a picture that's been floated around, a couple of pictures from CJ Carr, for instance, Sean, where you see Owen Wafel and Peter Jones. Those are grown men as junior in high school already, man. And Cam is a good-looking frame, really filling out. Carson Hobbs is a long dude. It was just really cool for me to see those 7 kids on campus together, because this is the first time, this is the first time that all 7 commits have been on campus at the same time, fully committed.
Yo, I love it. And the direction. This is something that I think was on the board this weekend that I think Brian Driscoll did a great job in answering. And someone was questioning adjustments in recruiting by the staff moving forward and possibly getting more visits from players in December, like schools like Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. And Notre Dame has identified what they need to do to be effective in recruiting. And it is jumping on these young men in each class as early as they can, getting them to commit, and then retaining them in the class, and then building the middle to the bottom of that recruiting class later on. Or, if they have a big time guy uncommitted, getting him those 1 or 2 guys to go ahead and make that late decision. They understand who they are. and you're
Yes.
seeing them continuing that trend, right? And everything we heard from all of the great players they had on campus, and we'll dive into them individually, make gives you a feeling that sometime the avalanche will be similar, right?
Hmm.
From April to July will be a time
Yes.
period where you'll see a lot of commitments start rolling in for Notre Dame. That's like their avalanche period, and that's where they'll get up to like what 75 to 80% of their class probably being full,
Yeah.
and
Probably
then
most of it.
they'll finish the rest of it, for the remainder of the year. So this just goes right in line with their breakdown of how they need to do things in comparison to how other great and top programs do things, and they're off to a great start. I'll say that. Look, I talked to Cam as well,
Yep.
and the seven committed guys, bumped gums and rubbed elbows and shoulders with some of the guys that were reporting from 23
Hmm.
over the weekend, and got in some laughs with them. So it really was a great experience that the committed guys got to have their own personal experience and
Yes.
weren't asked to do too much recruiting, to whereas they're already doing that. If you've seen, like you said, they're pretty much, I don't want to say calling out, but letting it be known to a certain recruit, like, let's go right now. So it's an amazing feeling, and
Yeah.
I really do think the bond that was set with the 23 recruiting class was felt and
Hmm.
inherited by the 24 class, guys like CJ Carr and Cam Williams, who have great relationships with Drake Bowen. They just picked up the mantle and, took the torch, and now they're running with it in the class of 2024. So things are looking really good.
A couple great notes there, Sean. One, I agree. The avalanche is coming. Okay, folks,
Hmm.
I'm just telling you this right now. The avalanche is coming. It is. I 100% agree with you on that, Sean. There's going to be, I think the next few months are going to be busy for us. I truly do. And I would also say the great note on the 2023 class reporting, obviously, the early enrollees are on campus, obviously moving in this weekend. And I think you said it perfectly, man. But I also, they have great recruiters in this class, like they did last class. The guys like Drake Bowen of the world, who were tremendous recruiters for 2023. But this class has a different vibe 2024 because your two best recruiters are quarterback and wide receiver, which
Hmm.
those are the sexy positions, right? Those are
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
those are the positions that everyone looks to. Not everyone looks to linebacker to be, the outspoken leader of a team, but everyone looks to a quarterback. Wide receivers like to talk. We know that, right? So
Right.
having those positions as well as the main recruiters in the class early, I think it's huge for Notre Dame. I think it's massive. You have a kid that is a borderline borderline 5-star quarterback in the class at CJ Carr. You have Cam Williams, who we talk all about this all the time, right, Sean? That players usually take dips in the rankings after they commit to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Well, Cam's up to number 20 player in the country overall in the country, number 5 wide receiver according to On3. So he had a massive junior season. You got some dudes already in the class, and I think that you're really taking a massive step forward. So those are the commits that were on campus. I want to go one by one to some of the more important players that were on campus, Sean. So we got a lot of great intel over the week. You should go to boards.irishbreakdown.com if you have not read the intel. A lot of visit recaps that have been coming out. Will continue to go out over the next couple of days because there was a lot of conversations that we had as a staff with a lot of these great players. So I wanted to start though, Sean.
Hmm.
Talked about Drake Bowen. I talked about linebacker. And Notre Dame has recruited the last 2 cycles at the linebacker position as well as anyone, man. You
Yeah.
pulled the 4-man class of Joshua Burnham, Jalen Sneed, Junior Tuihalamaka, Nolan Ziegler in 2022. Then you followed it up with Drake Bowen, Preston Zinter, and Jaden Osbury in the 2023 class, 2024 does not have a linebacker committed yet. There was a top target on campus this weekend. That was Lucas, Texas, Lovejoy linebacker Peyton Pierce, who I
Hmm.
believe measured in a little over 220 pounds. So a high school junior or 223 pounds already. He's a true Mike linebacker. I had a really awesome phone conversation with him, Sean, after the visit. So he talks a lot about relationships and wanting to get this process done. So a little glimpse into his background. He wants to get this thing done. He was adamant to me a few days ago when I talked to him, and then when I talked to him again yesterday, the day before, he talked a lot about the fact that he wants to have the decision made by June, just over with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he dropped the top 10, I think, a few weeks ago. He wants to drop a even smaller group. That's kind of the teams that he's focusing on after he finishes these junior day visits. Then after that, the finalists that he has, he wants to check out some spring practices this upcoming couple months to really get a feel for, flow of practice, how the coaches interact with players, just the general flow of the program, all that good stuff. And then from there, Peyton Pierce wants to get this over with, done with, and move on. I don't think he loves the process too much from my conversation with him. I mean, he literally said something like, I just want to get this over with, like word for word, And those kids, they just want to get it done and then move on forward, right? Because he's got a senior year ahead of him, So Peyton spent a lot of time this trip because he stayed the whole Saturday and then into Sunday as well. They went back home to Lucas, Texas on Sunday. And he spent a lot of time there, Sean, with James Laurinaitis. That was his guy all trip. It was James Laurinaitis. And he spoke to me so openly about how important it is to him that there's so many great linebacker guys on this coaching staff. Marcus Freeman, who played at a high level at Ohio State, had a cup of coffee in the NFL before the injury happened. He's been one of the better linebacker developers over the last few years in college football. Also a great defensive mind, obviously. Al Golden was just coaching the Cincinnati Bengals last year to the Super Bowl as a linebackers coach. But he spent most of his time in this trip with James Laurinaitis, who played in the NFL for 8 and 9 years. LA Rams, actually it was the St. Louis Rams at that point, their all-time leading tackler, quietly, All-American at Ohio State. And Peyton told me basically they went in to watch film together. They watched film for a while, went to eat some lunch, and then went back to watch more film. Like, that was his stuff, man. And they built a tremendous bond. He even spent more time with – he was basically with him all day. When they went to the hockey game that night, it was James Laurinaitis, Peyton Pierce, and then his father that were able to just sit there, talk ball, talk about Notre Dame, and just shoot the breeze, man, to have a great time. So I think that this was a very great visit for Peyton Pierce. I think that he is extremely high on Notre Dame. I would probably call them his leader leaving this visit. There's still time left for other schools to get back into it and to close the gap or, to take the lead or, things can change is my point.
Yeah.
But they did a tremendous job, and the resources that Notre Dame has at the linebacker position, even though linebacker did not take the step forward you wanted to see it this year on the field, they are able to recruit at such a high level because they have guys like James Laurinaitis in the room. So if people haven't seen Peyton Pierce play, tremendous linebacker. He was banged up a little bit this year, so he was limited in some games as a junior. But as a sophomore, showing 131 tackles, scored 10 touchdowns on offensive side of the football, had 21 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 5 forced fumbles. Kid is an excellent football player. And not to mention, he's a Texas kid. So continuing that pipeline in the state of Texas after signing 4 guys in 2023, I really like Notre Dame's chances with Peyton Pierce following this visit.
And that's good to hear. That's really good to hear because when you look at his film and you break him down, the one thing that stands out to me is that he just produces. Like whatever you ask him to do. Special teams, outside, rushing the passer, inside. I think I was talking to Brian about him, and Brian said, man, he's kind of like an upgraded or more athletic J.D. Bertrand. Like if you look at what J.D. does, he's faster, he's bigger, he's stronger, he's just a better athlete. The one thing I like about him, Brian, and we talk about it because we haven't seen it particularly recently at the linebacker position, and it's good to hear that he loves watching film, and he watched film with James Laurinaitis because, look, man, if you watch his film, he activates. Like he activates. Like whatever, especially on the inside as a linebacker. He finds a way to filter through the blocking and finds his way to the ball carrier. You talked about the stats from the junior season. His stats from his sophomore season were just as impressive. Like he just produces from that position, and he's a man. He's a guy that's going to put up 100 tackles. And when he gets to the college level, he's going to be 100+ tackle inside linebacker. But he still has versatility. And I mean, this is someone that plays quarterback as well. I mean, I'm looking at that. It's a kid.
Wildcat quarterback, man. It's wild.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
It's a kid here in Chicago that they got their eyes on in 25. He's like 250. He plays quarterback, Wildcat. And he's a defensive man. Like these kids, I don't know what they're doing, like what they're drinking, what's in the water, but the level of athleticism that we're seeing from some of these young men at 6'4", 220, 6'3", 240, and they can just move like gazelles on the football field. It's absolutely amazing. And Peyton Pierce definitely fits the bill. And I love what he said to you, and I love the vibe you're getting. And I think a lot of these kids, you're finding a lot of these kids really don't like being bothered, if that's the right word, right? Because that's recruiting, right? Coaches calling you, multiple coaches from multiple staffs calling you. You're hearing the same thing. You know when you're hearing BS, if you're a solid kid and you got your head on straight, and yada, 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 yada. And at some point, you're just like, man, look, I pretty much know what I want to do. I know who my top 5 to top 4 schools are. I'll, cut that down, and then in the spring, I'll take my visit, see some practices, and then make my decision. And good for him. Good for him to get through the minutia of recruiting and know what he wants. And that feels good, because I think that's the one thing that we will learn moving forward is that the lock-in and the buy-in for this program is always going to be at the top. Like this staff is going to look for the buy-in from young men that they don't have to really worry about maintaining. Not saying that they're not going to put in work to keep them in the class, but you don't have to worry about them coming back asking for things and doing other things that might lead to some of the situations they ended up having to suffer through during the fall.
Yep. No, really well said. And again, Sean, one of my key points, man, because I talked to Brian about this maybe a month ago. I forget when it is. We talk a lot, so things kind of mesh after a little while, right? But after how much we talked about them creating this pipeline in Texas and getting Micah Bell, getting guys like Braylon James, like Jaden Greathouse into the class, like Caleb Smith, 4 total recruits in the 2023 class after only having 3 the previous 5 years combined. I was kind of looking through the board like a few weeks ago, and I was just kind of like, I don't know how many Texas guys right now that I would call Notre Dame a reasonable, destination for right now. I mean, I thought that they had a good solid start with a Nigel Smith, right?
Yeah,
Who's been to Notre Dame a couple times, but I think that they're fading with him, right? I don't think that they're in a great spot with Micah Hudson. Like, I just don't think that one's going to happen. So looking at some of their contacts with Texas guys right now, Peyton Pierce is the guy right now that you look at and say that is their best chance right now to land a pretty early commitment from a Texas kid and continue that pipeline on top of, hey, by the way, I forget if it was ESPN or Rivals, but they have him, Peyton Pierce, as the number 34 overall player in the 2024 class. So he's a pretty darn good football player too. So it's not like just continuing the pipeline to continue the pipeline. It's adding a good football player and also continuing a Texas pipeline. So I just want to reiterate that again, man. I think that that's big. I know someone commented on the chat, and you're absolutely right that Peyton Pierce is being courted by a lot of those, Brian would call them the Bible Belt schools, those Southern Midwest schools, the Oklahomas of the world, the Texas A&Ms, all those Texas Oklahoma schools. But I really do think that Notre Dame has a legitimate shot. Like I said, I think that they are the leader for Peyton Pierce right now. So have to withstand some more visits that he's going to take ultimately, but we will know in the pretty near future. Because again, by June, which doesn't mean the end of June, I think by the beginning of June, right around you will have a commitment from Peyton Pierce. The list will be cut down, I think, pretty soon as far as his finalists. And I would expect Notre Dame to be absolutely one of those finalists. So Peyton Pierce has a great visit. Nice to see. We're now moving on, Sean, because we had two big-time defensive linemen in 2024 that were on campus this weekend as well.
Mm-hmm.
They happen to be twin brothers out of Windsor, Connecticut. This is Loomis Chaffee School. Defensive ends, Jacob and Jared Smith.
Windsor has some really good outlet malls, by the way.
Do they? Do they actually?
Yeah. On the way to Boston from New Haven, I happened to stop there one time. Yeah, I remember that. They have a pretty nice outlet mall there.
That's funny. So I had the chance to talk to Jacob and Jared. So for position sake, just so that people understand, Jacob Smith is the longer edge, so he's more of the Viper type. He was another cool thing they did, Sean, is I should have let off on this. They actually did some measurements this weekend as well, got the heights and weights and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So I got heights and weights on a few of the players for that in the 2024 class, especially the targets that were on campus.
Yeah,
Jacob Smith, who projects at Viper as a junior right now, he measured in at 6'4" and 227 pounds. So he's a long kid that's filling out. He was listed at 6'5", 225. So he's right there in the same ballpark. I think he might have been 6'4" and some change as well. He is the Viper of the two. Jared Smith is more of the big end, could maybe grow into a 3-tech eventually, but he weighed in at 6'3.5", 245 pounds is what Jared Smith weighed in at. And his weight and size are kind of fluctuate depending on what recruiting platform you look at. But on our list, we had him at, I think, 6'4", 250. So he was 6'3.5", 245. So he's right there in the same ballpark as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to Jared first. He called the trip, Sean, and this was 100% his words. The trip was immaculate. Immaculate. He said immaculate for one. I was like, oh, you're a Notre Dame kid, aren't you? You said immaculate. But he talked a lot about the relationships, how easily the coaches make them just feel at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked to Jacob, who, again, is the Viper type. He said, almost word for word, this is verbatim. Actually, this is word for word because I'm reading it right now. He said, They are doing the relationship building is exactly what it should be. They make us feel like we are at home every time we visit. So these are another two kids that Notre Dame is pushing for, twins out of the Connecticut area. For both project to play defensive end, although Viper and strong side end early on. Jacob and Jared Smith, I think that Notre Dame moved the needle with those guys. I think that, again, Notre Dame is right at the top of the list for these two.
Mm-hmm.
Their timeline is not as well kind of solidified. They talk about it. They're kind of in the boat that we want to commit by senior year, right? So what does that mean? That could be next week. That could be in the spring. That could be in the summer. Like, we don't 100% know exactly when that's going to happen. But I think Notre Dame has a very good chance at Jacob and Jared Smith. And I think that the family vibes that Notre Dame staff is putting off for them is what's really selling them on Notre Dame.
And you can really include their area to a pipeline that Notre Dame is creating, right? With what they were able to do with Boubacar and Gerby Lambert in the 24 class, and now Windsor. That's all in that Northeast Boston, Connecticut area. And Notre Dame is trying to establish a pipeline there as well. So bringing these two from that area, they have already some guys that are currently on the roster playing in Notre Dame. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I have to tell. I think Ty Chan is from that area, if I'm not mistaken. So there's already players on the roster, 23 guys coming in. Notre Dame's they're doing an incredible job, man. They're doing an incredible job. Like, if you look at a map, you can see the areas and the regions they're attacking, and they're getting the best players. And like you said, they're getting on these kids early and making them feel comfortable, right? That's the one thing we talked about with the staff, making young men feel comfortable that when they get on campus, you stand above every other visit, right? Because I'm sure a lot of visits for these young men, they step on campus and they're on with top players, and they might feel like a guy is getting more. You've heard these stories. This guy is getting, man, they're giving all the attention to this guy. or they're giving all the attention to that guy. Notre Dame does a really good job of making everyone that comes in on a visit feel a part of something and feel
Yep.
special. And like I said, Chad is a great ambassador for Notre Dame when it comes to recruiting, and the staff just follows suit. Just follows suit. It's so funny because I was laughing because I was imagining when they're going through what's going to happen, how stoic Marcus Freeman probably is. Like, all right, sounds good. Just make it work. Just make it work. Because I can't really. Now, if Marcus Freeman had come out in one of those suits and an earpiece, that probably would have really taken it over the top. Because the players probably been like, "Wow, Coach Freeman is doing this." But
Yeah.
just I love both of those kids. Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. Jacob is probably the higher ranked.
But I think he's ranked by 3 out of 4 services. There actually is one service that has Jared higher, but I think there's there's at least one service for each that ranks him as a top 100 player in the 2024 class.
But for this class, the other brother might be more important.
Explain that. I want to hear your perspective.
I think in this class,
Mhm.
you really need to get bigger, right?
Okay.
Because I think they believe right now what they have at Viper currently on the roster, like they have some guys that can end up being really good that are currently on the roster at the Viper position. And we know some of the guys they're looking at. Like they have a nicer setup and run of guys at Viper from the 24 class.
Yep.
And if they took any one of the 5, I don't think we would be upset. If they took, these 2 guys out of the 5 guys they're looking at, or out of the 4 guys they're looking at, or if they took another combination out of the 4 guys. Of course, we might have a preference.
Sure.
But if it ended up being another combination, like, okay, fine. Big end, possibly, maybe interior is something that Notre Dame knows that they need to shore up and improve, starting with Justin Scott, hopefully, and moving on in that. And that's why, the value from adding to that in the 24 class, because it's a greater need, is why I make the statement. Has nothing to do with them as players and breaking down who's better. It's just the value to that particular class and what we all have said Notre Dame needs to make sure that they improve the interior of the defense in the 24 class, starting with Justin Scott and then getting some more size along the defensive line. That's why I make a statement like that.
Yeah. No, I think that I wouldn't disagree with you, Sean. The interior was a main priority for this class, in my opinion. But I would say just in general, the defensive line was a massive priority in general. Like this was a big time job for Al Washington and the staff to get some high impact defensive linemen. I think that when you look at it, Justin Scott has always been the priority, in my opinion. You need that playmaking size inside. But the one miss that you did have in the 2023 class out of the defensive line is that you didn't really get a true Viper type, right? So I do think getting that guy or 2 would be very important in the 2024 class. But I don't think that it's necessarily more important than getting size, because that's where Notre Dame falls short right now, is that they just don't have a lot of size on the defensive line. But if you get Justin Scott, you have Owen Wafel already. Did you see the picture of Owen Wafel, by the way? That is a grown man, right? So you get those 2, and then another guy that maybe projects more of an inside player, and then you get a big end, and then maybe 1 or 2 Vipers.
Yeah.
Then we're cooking with grease, man. Then we're talking about a really good defensive line class. But I think the defensive line class, the Smith twins have to be in that conversation, Sean, because like I said, they're highly touted players. They're different, which makes it really intriguing. They're very different players. And by the way, one of their most recent visits was about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. They visited Alabama, right? So Alabama is offered these kids. It's not like they're so. And you talked about the importance of like the Connecticut area. I'll say the whole New England area, I think, is a interesting importance in 2024, because I talked about 2023 in an article a few weeks ago where You got Preston Zinter. You got Boubacar Traore. You shot your shot with a couple other guys up there. But now, so far this cycle, you're talking about trying to get a Gerby Lambert, trying to get the Smith twins. The New England area, just in general, has some guys in back-to-back classes, and I think guys that they do really like. So I'm very interested to see kind of moving forward how this defensive line shapes out, because everyone keeps asking that, man. We have a question about that in the mailbag today, and I get it. We had one on the board. We have had multiple threads on the board about defensive line recruiting. It's going to be fascinating, folks, because I still think 5 is probably the number, but like I wouldn't be shocked if it pushes to 6. I really wouldn't, because I just think that there's a lot of players that Notre Dame really likes in that class, for one. And for two, I think, again, you're just continuing to match needs, and getting more size inside especially is a priority, and then getting a Viper or two, I think, in the class. So Jacob and Jared Smith, I think, bring tremendous value to this team. And I think that they are very high on Notre Dame. It's just a question of when does it end? Because there are a lot of really good schools on them. I know Kentucky was kind of a hot school early for them, but then Alabama, the Texases of the world, like those schools start coming in and making things a little bit more cloudy as far as where they're leaning. But I do think Notre Dame is probably the leader, if not they're very high on their list. So Jacob and Jared Smith, defensive lineman out of Loomis Chaffee School in Connecticut. Sean, you remember when I talked about how everyone loved what Chad Bowden and the staff did to start the day with the secret agent get up?
Yeah.
There's one player, and this was according to Brian Driscoll, who was there, and I talked to someone, again, close to the situation, that also agreed that it did take him a little bit of surprise. One player that maybe did not enjoy the little hijinks as much was Walter Matthews, who is a tight end out of the state of Georgia, Hiram High School. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but he is listed at 6'7", between 245 and 250 pounds. He apparently, Sean, had a basketball game the night before. When they got to campus, him and his family, he was sleeping in the back. So these guys start, pounding on the car and everything, and they wake him up abruptly, and he was, I think, just kind of in shock there for a few minutes, like, what the heck is happening? I don't know what's happening right now. So Walter Matthews may have not been too keen on it, but it was more about, he was sleeping and kind of scared him and stuff. But, Sean, I got an official weight on Walter Matthews that I want to share with you.
Yeah, let's have some fun with this one.
A couple testing numbers, too, from over the summer that I was like, oh, that's eye-popping. First of all, speaking of eye-popping, I haven't had a super in-depth conversation with Walter. We're kind of filling out some time to talk, but I did get a few responses from him during the visit. He said the visit was going fantastic, and he used the word eye-popping to describe his experience at Notre Dame, because he had just been offered pretty recently to Notre Dame just a few weeks ago. So new to the tight end board, and this was his first time on campus overall. So I think he really did a good job with him, and I'll have more inside intel on that. So you should go to boards.irishbreakdown.com as I have a little bit of a more in-depth conversation with Walter Matthews. I'll be sure to update you. So I didn't get a height on him, Sean, but he weighed in on campus apparently at 256 pounds. And if you saw the picture of him, he's not a chunky guy. He's just a massive kid. 256 pounds. I was told by someone that over the summer, he tested like an absolute freak. Apparently, he ran an electronic in the 4.6s at his size, Sean. We're talking about 200, and I'm sure he was lighter at that point, but we're talking about a 256-pound tight end that ran pretty recently in the 4.6s. He has reported that he has a 37-inch vert. This kid's a freak show, man. He's a freak show. Had a great visit on campus. This tight end board to pair with Jack Larson in the 2024 class is getting more and more exciting by the day as I learn more about these kids. Carter Nelson, this guy we've talked about a ton. Jaden Riddell out of St. Louis, not St. Louis, out of Missouri, who is a more of a flex tight end, 6'5", 230 type kid. And then this Walter Matthews kid's out of Georgia, man. Notre Dame's finding some dudes at the tight end position, and I think Notre Dame's got a little bit of an inside shot here, man. Like, I wouldn't call him the favorite. I wouldn't, because he's in SEC country. Georgia's in his backyard. it's going to be tough to get him out of the South. But I think Notre Dame made a really good impression on a guy like Walter Matthews this weekend.
Yeah, I am very interested in seeing the combination because this kid is like Donnell Washington, like and Jack Larson could be Brock Bowers. Now I'm seeing the combination like in 12 personnel like Georgia uses. Like, okay, Larson and Matthews, just because of his size and his movement is like Washington as well. He's a look, what do you have, like 8 touchdowns as a junior? So they just get in the red zone and just here, throw it up, go get it. And that 37-inch vertical takes over. So that's the type. The tight end situation is going to be very interesting to see who they prefer and what they view of what the board looks like. Like, you know how we say on draft day in the NFL, man, I would love to be in the war room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to be in the tight end room. Like, okay, where's the board? Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me see how this board is looking, because each one is definitely had. I think Jack Larson is different from Carter Nelson. Carter Nelson is definitely different from Matthews and Riddell. So it's like, what do you like, and how you envision this, giving it to Tommy Rees and being used in this offense, right? And this is something else. But I would venture to say most tight ends at Notre Dame were similar in a lot of ways. The vast majority of them, you had standouts like a Tyler Eifert that was different.
Right.
Michael Mayer was different immediately. Tommy Trimble, I guess, was different.
Oh, yes.
But for the most part, the tight ends are very similar. You could literally have 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends coming in 24 class that are totally different. Like all 3, if you take 3, are totally different. And that, to me, gives even greater value to a program that already produces tight ends at an alarming rate to be successful in the NFL.
You know what's really interesting about the board right now too, Sean, is I'm talking about this for people dropping questions and super chats in right now. Just know that we're going to hit those during the mailbag here very soon. So the interesting part here, Sean, is that you have Jack Larson, who's more of a 6'3" flex tight end that can move all over the place, right? I wouldn't necessarily say that Notre Dame is, because if I heard that you have a flex tight end and I'm hearing like, what's the best pairing? My initial thought would be a big inline tight end that can block and do all those types of things. I don't necessarily think that's what Notre Dame's doing with this tight end board, man. Because I think that they could have stuck in the state of Illinois with guys like Christian Betancourt and Grant Steck and those types of guys. If they wanted just to get a bigger guy that probably projects more as a blocker, who can also do some stuff at tight ends as a receiver. But you look at what they're doing, I don't think that's where they're going, because Carter Nelson, Walter Matthews, and Jaden Riddell, they're not blockers, right? Like, they're big pass catchers right now. I'm sure that Walter Matthews could be a blocker because he's massive, right? But these guys are long pass catchers. I think what you're getting to pair with Jack Larson is, you say, Jack, you are a 6'3" move tight end. You don't have the greatest length in the world, but you have great hands, great body control, a fantastic receiving option at the tight end position. We need to get some length with you. I think that's what Notre Dame's going after right now, is length. We talk about, Carter Nelson is 6'4.5", 6'5", with vines for arms. Jaden Riddell is a long dude at the tight end position, playing more outside receiver for his team in Missouri right now. And then Walter Matthews. Good luck finding a longer tight end in the 2024 class than Walter Matthews. So they are trying to find some length to go along with Jack Larson. It's going to be interesting to see, because, again, I think they're in a pretty good spot with Carter Nelson. Jaden Riddell is a guy that's just new to the board, so we'll see. Walter Matthews, I think you made a good first impression. I honestly don't think there's a wrong answer to who's the second tight end in the class, so Sean. I think it's like, I think that's what you were saying, is like, pick your flavor at this point, right? Like, what type do you want? Because there's a lot of different types on the board, obviously.
Pick your flavor and push for a third. Like, that's what I would be doing. Like, I would be picking
Yeah.
my flavor and pushing for a third. Like, oh, please give me one more. Please, please just give me one more. Like, can I use my 25? Can I use it right now? Like, if let me use my 25, one of
Yeah,
mine
and then we'll
right
get into
now.
25. There's an absolute stud in the backyard that wants to come, right? Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. But you deal with that when it comes up, you know? Like, if you're a staff, you know how to deal with the scholarship situation. But talent is talent, man.
Yep.
Talent is talent. And if you find yourself in the lead for two of these guys, what do you do? You come
Yeah.
down to it, and it's like June and Riddell and Carter Nelson both have you at the top, and you feel the vibe that they both want to come. What are you doing?
Right. Right.
Like, are you gonna? No, I'm just like, yo, or do you make them? No, or you don't. You get greedy and take them. I wish they had been greedy with the offensive line, and then they would have had another guy who was on a visit and heard that they preferred somebody else over him for some reason. It's like, no, forget that.
Are we revisiting skeletons right now, Sean? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah,
We're
man,
pulling skeletons out. All right.
that triggered something, but
I saw that young man down at the All American Bowl, by the way. So it was a good time.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no, it's yo. That's why looking at the board would be very interesting right now. In that room, because look, you put in the work to be in great position with all of them, right?
Yep.
So I think the Carter Nelson is very much tied to, in my opinion, what happens with Rayola. Like,
Think so?
if
Think
Rayola
that's a
goes,
needle mover? Yeah.
if he goes to Georgia, that's good for Notre Dame.
Could
That's
be.
good for Notre Dame. If he goes to Nebraska, shout out to Matt Rule. It's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
So
That's a
it's
good
just
point.
little things like that. But I don't, man. What would you do if you had two kids come June that both felt like they wanted to come, and you're sitting there with Jack Larson in tow?
I would take 3 in this class if that came to that point, Sean. Like if 2 out of 3 of those kids wanted to come to Notre Dame, I would take both their commitments on top of Jack Larson, because I'm a believer in riding momentum, and you don't really have more momentum at tight end than what you could just show them what you did with Michael Mayer over the last 3 years, right? Like, talk about momentum. That is like because you don't know what tight end's going to look like in 2023. What if you have a little bit of a struggling year at tight end? Then it's going to make recruiting tight end a little more difficult, because you're going to be like, you didn't do a great job developing the other tight ends in the room, right? But right now, you have a tight end that's going to be a first-round draft pick, and use that momentum to your advantage, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, use it. So I would, and again, man, if 2 guys that I really, really liked, 2 out of 3 of those kids, for instance, if I really liked them, I would consider taking 3. I would consider it. I would. I think I would. Yeah. I mean, because 2 is the minimum for me. Like, I would take 3 though. I would take 3. So, and plus you've had a lot of injuries at tight end too, right? Like we talked about.
Yeah.
Well, Kane Barron transferred, obviously. Kevin Bauman's been banged up. Eli Raridan's now got back-to-back ACL tears. It's just, there's a lot of questions in that room right now from a depth perspective. So I would definitely consider 3, but we'll see what happens. We shall see. And you also want to see how guys step up, right? Like Mitchell Evans and those guys. Like, if they take a step forward, maybe you're just like, just take 2. Like, our guys are developing well. We'll take 2. But if they also don't take a step forward, then maybe 3 is even more attractive at that point. So, that's where we are. So, Walter Matthews, good visit at Notre Dame. Going to have more in depth for you guys later today, hopefully. We had a kid, Sean, visit Notre Dame that kind of took us a little bit off guard this weekend. So I want to comment on this kid for a minute to kind of set the backstory, and let's talk it out, man. This was an interesting couple days for this young man. Fishers, Indiana, Hamilton Southeastern, offensive lineman, Styles Prescott, who is a 6'6", 270-pound offensive tackle, in-state kid in Indiana. So on Friday, Harry Heastand went out to his high school to talk to his coaches, sit down with them, talk about Styles, make sure the fit makes sense because, and Styles told me this, Harry Heastand, before this visit, had done a lot of homework on him. I'd watched his film, had breaking down games of film, not just a highlight tape, to just see what does he do well? What are the issues he's having? Where can he improve? The kind of the nuance to the position. So he goes down there, sees Styles, just kind of eyes him up, all that good stuff. But, obviously, because they're not allowed to talk to the players on those visits. So, but he gets to sit down with the coaches, talk about the grades, the film, the character. Very shortly after that, he gets an invite to come to Junior Day, which was the next day. This was on Friday. He makes it out to Junior Day. And he ends this visit with an offer from the University of Notre Dame. And I mean, he's an in-state kid, right? And I know he's an in-state kid, but I think Fisher's, when I looked it up on GPS, I think it's like 2.5 hours south of South Bend or something like that, right?
So it's not Fort Wayne area, somewhere like that.
I can't remember where it was on the map, but I'm pretty sure it's like a couple hours away. So I don't think that it's like super close to Notre Dame, but obviously Notre Dame has an impact on him because he's an in-state Indiana kid and he knows what Notre Dame means, right? Mm-hmm. And following suit, Sean, he had an offer from someone saying that it's closer in Indianapolis. So I guess in that area.
Cool.
Thank you for that, by the way, in the chat. But just north of Indy. Thanks, Brandon. So, but Sean, he had an offer from Iowa before this, and he had like Kentucky and some good offers. Since he got the offer from Notre Dame, though, he's got an offer from Penn State, Michigan just offered. All the Midwest powers are starting to come in now, right? Mm-hmm. Which it's how it happens. It's a copycat league at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But apparently, Sean, and I mean, I've just briefly watched film on this kid because I didn't know too much about him beforehand because, we hadn't heard too much conversation piece about their interest in him. Mm-hmm. But it looks like Notre Dame's going to be a player here. We're still trying to figure out the timeline for when he wants to make a decision. Again, I think he's a kid that's probably wants to get it done sometime before the season from kind of everything that I'm hearing. But ends the day with a Notre Dame offer, and he is a player that I think needs a lot of work. He's a raw kid. There's no doubt. He needs to gain a lot of weight. His body type's a little troubling to me, but he's a long kid. He's athletic, and he's a true offensive tackle type. And we've talked about the importance for Notre Dame in 2024. You have Peter Jones, who's more of an interior player. You got to get a couple offensive tackle types, and I think that's what they're looking at Styles Prescott for.
Let me liken this to having a mechanic and then taking your car to a custom shop, right? If you take your car to a regular mechanic, maybe they can replace the muffler, do an oil change, do some things, interior. You take it to a custom shop, now you're talking about doing things that go outside of the factory, right? Like order in special stuff, strip it down, build it back up. And this is what Harry Heastand is for me. This is the advantage of having a Harry Heastand, to whereas we might look at film, Ryan, and say, no, he's raw. And Harry Heastand looks at it and says, yep, let me red shirt him one year. I'm gonna customize this. This is gonna be real nice when I get through. Well, remember that show Pimp My Ride back in the day on MTV? That's Harry Heastand. He'd be like the exhibit of offensive line coaches.
Pimp My Ride, pimp my Styles right. Prescott. Right, yeah.
We show up, we take your young man, your young offensive line prospect. You give him a Harry Heastand, and now he's come out as a customized, athletic, true tackle, ready to go first round in the NFL in 3 seasons. Look, man, this is where we have to trust Harry, yes. Right? Like, okay, all right, if you say so, Harry, but he is that type of genius. I remember him telling the staff in March, like, yo, relax. Like I have to, man. There's some things I have to break in Blake Fisher and Joe Alt.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to be patient with these guys. There's some things I have to break, and we're looking like really, like they look pretty good towards the end of last season to me. But that's him. Like being able to see, watch film, see, break it down, strip it down, and then customize you and build you back up into the player that you need to be. And that's what basically got Charles Jackson on board on his one visit, right? Him breaking down his film. And every time he came back, the conversation with Harry was always about technique. What you doing? What about this? What about that? And with this young man, I think he sees something that he can really produce that's similar to something that he's already done. So everybody's talking about the fish tank in the car from that
I
show.
know, man. I was watching that too. I was looking at that. I was trying not to laugh while we were talking about it. I mean, honestly, Sean, it's a great analogy, though. It really is, because you know how I am, man. Like, I understand that this kid's a 16, 17-year-old kid playing football, right? But I watch it, I'm just like, the frame worries me a little bit. There's a couple things that, on the film that are a little troubling to me. I see the upside. I see the athleticism, the length, all that great stuff. But at the end, and I think I said this on the board at one point, I put my evaluation. I was like, but at the end of the day, in Harry, I trust, right? So if Harry Hiestand sees something, man, then I'll trust it. I'll trust it, because he's had a track record to developing these types, right? And I'll let it play out. I'll let it play out. So, but Styles Prescott gets the the endorsement obviously on Friday during the school visits. Then he gets up to the campus on Saturday, gets to sit down with Marcus Freeman to get the official offer. Marcus Freeman basically just went through, how much Harry Hiestand endorses this kid and thinks that he is a Notre Dame football player and will be able to, get the best out of him. So, in Harry we trust, man. In Harry we trust. So, we'll see if Styles Prescott ends up getting to that level, or even ends up with the class just in general. We have to see if they're able, because now there's some big-time schools coming after him, right? Some big-time schools.
One particular school from, the state up north, as they're referred to by Ohio State, that seems very reactionary to Notre Dame lately.
Always, man. Yes. Always. It's so funny. It's absolutely so funny. But that is new offensive tackle target for Notre Dame. Styles Prescott out of Fishers, Indiana, Hamilton Southeastern. Sean, there was another offer that was extended over the weekend. Another one. The only 2025 recruit that was on campus. Obviously, this event is designed for juniors, going to be rising seniors, the 2024 kids. Well, there was a 2025 athlete on campus out of Clayton, Ohio, Northmont, Dorian Brew, who is a 6'3", around 180 pounds athlete, plays corner for his team, plays wide receiver for his team. He was extended the offer, and I talked to Dorian. The offer came as an athlete from Notre Dame. So we don't know if he ends up at Notre Dame, will he be a wide receiver? Will he be a cornerback? I think the staff will still try to figure that out. I don't think that decision has been made. He's been offered as an athlete, and he's only a sophomore in high school. So we got a little bit of time here. But Dorian Brew, a couple quick notes on him. Father actually played at Kansas, played defensive back, and he went to play in the NFL for a little bit. He's an Ohio kid who I think was a number 61 overall player in the class on 3 in 2025. He's rated by every recruiting platform as a wide receiver. But if you watch his film, he has some eye-popping moments as a cornerback as well. So 2025 athlete, Notre Dame offered over the weekend, Dorian Brew. We will see. He's got it improving and quickly evolving offer list. A lot of big-time schools are starting to offer this kid. Has not been offered by Ohio State yet, unless something has happened in the last hour that I have not seen. But a very interesting player, Sean, targeting a player in the state of Ohio. Obviously, you're going to be probably fighting with Ohio State at some point here. But Dorian Brew gets an offer from Notre Dame, and I know that he was very excited about it.
The one thing that stands out, great ball skills. I don't care if he's
Yes.
playing corner or wide receiver. He can high point. He's a hands catcher at a young age for wide receiver, which is very encouraging. You see a lot of young kids using their bodies. This man goes up, two hands, snatches the ball out of the air, whether he is the receiver or the defensive back. And he's so long and believes in himself so much. A lot of times, you know, he breaks on the ball very quickly as a defensive back. But then I feel like sometimes I was watching this film and I'm like, okay, he's daring and baiting the quarterback to throw that because he knows he can catch up. Like he's baiting him. He's daring him to throw it. He threw it. And of course, there he is, jumping up in the air, snagging it out of midair. So he's a great kid in 25. Like you said, his mom even raved on social media about the visit and said thank you for the great time. So solid foundation. I'm glad they got him on campus. Once again, understanding what the battle is going to be. This is going to be a battle with Ohio State. Let's get in early on this young man. Establish a relationship with him and his family and see if we can make things happen this time next year and get him to sign on early with Notre Dame.
Sean, it seems kind of there's been a lot of 2025 offers that have been extended by Notre Dame already. It's been a lot, and it's atypical because it's a little bit odd because usually Notre Dame's big offer opportunity is the pot of gold, right? Which these kids will still get their pot of gold.
Right.
They'll still get that official offer on that day. But we've seen a lot of 2025 kids that have been offered by Notre Dame already. Dorian Brewer, I guess, is the latest in that regard, but we'll be interested to see. We'll be interested to see how this one plays out. We have a couple more kids that we want to rock through. Had the opportunity to talk to Prior Lake, Minnesota High School Jide Abasiri, who is a defensive lineman. Sean has not gotten an offer from Notre Dame officially yet. It did not come this weekend, I should say. Talked to him, though, and the Notre Dame staff was very optimistic about him and was just kind of telling him, like, hey, man, we think that we could get the best out of you. We think you have the world of potential. Stay locked in with us because we'll see what happens. So I think that he's a kid that is going to take a little bit of a rise because if you watch Jide's film right now, he's a very raw kid, but that length and athleticism he has playing on the interior – it's really interesting. So I don't know if he'll ever get extended an offer from Notre Dame. I don't know where he'll end up. I know, though, that he has a few Power 5 offers already, so he's going to get a lot of interest here moving forward, whether it's at Notre Dame or not. But he had a very good meeting with the coaches, had a really good visit overall. I did get an official height weight on him, Sean. He was 6'5.5", 267 pounds. So he was a big young man. So we're just wanting
these kids, man.
Right, man. Right. And I mean, if you look at him, man, Brian took a picture of him. He's skinny, man. And he's 6'5.5", 267. Like, he's a big kid, man. He's going to be massive. He told me that he wants to play between 285 and 290 as a senior. So he's ready to gain about 25 pounds of weight right now, which is going to be wild. But yeah.
In following some of these kids, do you ever have a moment? Like when I spoke to Justin Scott last week, I had a moment.
Yep.
My first love is basketball. And I'm talking to him and I'm sizing myself up against him. And I'm like, you know what? If I had like 3 more inches, I could have done this on the basketball court. Do you ever think to yourself, man, a few more inches and about 20 more pounds, I was already a darn good player.
I tell my wife all the time, if I was 6'3", I'd be in the NFL. So, yeah. We're
right there, brother. We're right there.
Yeah.
Right. If I was 6'3", no one could stop me. Yeah. Cool. You got to have that in you, man, as a competitor. You have to.
Absolutely. And I'm still trying to get an arm length measurement on Jai because again, Sean, I've seen pictures and film of him at this point. He is long, man. He's got to have 34 plus inch arms. Has to, man. He is a long dude. I bet 80-inch wingspan plus 34-inch arms. Like that kid is stupid long. Again, very raw football player.
Yeah.
But he has tools, man. And this is the second time that he's been on campus. Was on campus for the Clemson game. Was on campus for the junior day. So Notre Dame's keeping close ties on this kid. They're keeping close eyes on him because I do think that he's a kid that's going to explode a little bit. So
I agree.
We'll see. Couple brief notes, Sean, because we haven't had any deep intel on these two players, but just a couple things that I've heard that I just want to put out in the universe. One was Bryce Young, who was a defensive end out of the state of North Carolina, son of Bryant Young, all-time great at Notre Dame. So just wanted to comment on his size, that apparently he weighed in at 6'5", 240-plus pounds. Brian Driscoll was on hand to see his weight, and someone did verify that for me later in the day that he did weigh in at 240-something pounds, which is a far cry from the 220 pounds that I thought he was. So he is filling out tremendously. Brian has commented on him a ton of times about the length, the size of his hands and feet, the broad shoulders. This kid is growing into his body quickly. Everyone keeps talking about him as a viper, but he may be a strong side end when all is said and done because he's got that type of body type, man. And here's a possibility where this kid could be 265 pounds and still look like slender, right? Like doesn't look fat at all or bad weight on him. So Bryce Young, impressed from just the size attributes. Obviously, he's going to be high on Notre Dame, and we knew that coming into we knew that coming into this weekend though that Notre Dame has a very good chance at Bryce Young. Yeah. So he was there. Yes, you would hope, right? I mean, if you don't have a good chance with him, then there's probably something wrong there.
You talk about a kid that probably wakes up, sees Notre Dame, goes into the bathroom, sees Notre Dame, right. Goes down to the family room, sees Notre Dame.
Oh man, yeah, and he doesn't count as a Chicago kid, Sean, but I'll give you some credit here because Bryant Young was a Chicago kid, so he's a Chicago kid by association.
DNA.
Right?
It's the DNA.
Yes.
It's the
exactly.
DNA. It's
exactly.
The DNA. I claim Tyler. So, he came from California, but we know where he was born. So,
That's very true, man. Oh God, that's really true. But yeah, man, he showed up and he impressed physically. He looked the parts, developing into his body because the tools were all there on film, man. Tools. My man forgets that he has hands a lot, and he just is very unsure of what he's doing on the football field right now. But the tools are there. The kid can run, and he's athletic, and he's long. But now he's growing into his body. Could be another big riser. Although there is one recruiting source that already has him as a top 150 player in the 2024 class. So people are taking notice, and he's developing. So keep a close eye on Bryce Young. Darius Hayes, Sean, I got a little insight into him. I've not gotten a chance to talk to him since the visit.
Mm-hmm.
Talked to him leading up to the visit, though. Notre Dame is a place that he is very excited about, has been for a while. This is his second trip to campus. He got in a little later than some of the other guys. There was some issues with his plane ride in, so I think a plane got delayed or something. So he got in a little later in the day, but he stayed through a good portion of Sunday to make up for that lost time. And I just have had people that are in the know kind of rave about his family and where he comes from and just his interest in Notre Dame because he is a very well thought out kid, right? Because he's a Florida kid. He's Largo High School in Florida. Yeah. So he's in SEC country. I know, Florida is a team that he's looking at. All the SEC schools are on him. But I'm here to say that I think Notre Dame has a chance here. I do think they do. It's going to be tough to get him out of the South. It is. But he is a thought-provoking, really smart, intelligent kid that I think does get it. I think he gets it. And he's come down Notre Dame a couple times on his own dime, right? On his family's dime. And he had a really good weekend from what I hear. The staff is excited about him. He's excited about Notre Dame. So it'll be a battle, and it's not one that I expect to be decided anytime soon. I think this is probably one that goes into the senior season. I don't think this is a spring or summer decision on Darius Hayes' part, but Notre Dame's in the ballpark, right? They're in the conversation, and I know we have a question about where he fits in Notre Dame defense. I mean, he could be a Mike. He could be a Will. He could be a Viper. That's one of those kids that you get the athleticism, the size, and then you figure that stuff out later. So Those are a couple of the last kids, though, that we don't have as much intel, but just have a couple nice little notes. But that was Junior Day this weekend, Sean. Again, I think it was a really successful weekend. 17 players on campus, including 7 committed players in the class. So you had 10 uncommitted players, targets in 2024, and one 2025 player that were on campus. More of an intimate setting, got to spend a lot of time with coaches. I think it was a success for Notre Dame. So that was Notre Dame Junior Day 2023. We're going to move into the mailbag next. So start throwing in your questions in the chat. I already have a bunch starts. We're going to have a really good mailbag section here. Before we get into the mailbag, though, if you could please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit the notification bell because we'll be having a lot more shows. We're going to be having IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as tomorrow I'll be back with Brian Driscoll for our normal week show, and we'll be getting kind of rolling through the rest of the off season here. So hit that notification bell so you stay up to date. Also sign up at the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are always very much appreciated. So if you do that for us, also go to CFB Nation on YouTube, subscribe to that podcast as well. But that'll do it for the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. All right, Sean, we're going to get into the mailbag section of the day. We had a super chat to get things started. Again, throw in those questions, throw in those super chats. Let's get this rocking and rolling here. We have from Sammy Young, Sean, who said, if Notre Dame doesn't land Justin Scott, who's next on the board?
Nobody.
No, don't say that. Don't say that.
We're all in. That's the attitude.
Well, speak to that, Sean. So we had, obviously, it's been a crazy week or so. You got the in-depth visit with Justin after his basketball game. Got to sit down with him and his coaches and all that great stuff. Had great intel piece on the board. But you also, a couple days later, it's, they come to see him on Friday. The coaches come to see him. They have the full court blitz in Chicago and in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Freeman's out to see him among some other coaches, to see Justin Scott and talk to his coaches, all that great stuff. And then he announces that night that I'm making my decision on the 31st this month, which is Justin Scott's birthday. So give us a little insight, Sean. Give us a little more insight to this one, man. I know you've been excited about him for a while, but this one's coming to a conclusion very quickly.
But, Sammy, thanks for super chatting the question. The mentality right now has to be there is nobody else on the board. Like, this is the dude. This is the dude. And we'll deal with everybody else on the board after we land him. He is the guy. He is the linchpin to this defensive line recruiting in 2024. He announced that he's going to make his decision publicly known on the 31st, which is his birthday. And I'll give you our conversation late Friday night, because he had a basketball game, big time rivalry with Loyola Academy and St. Ignatius. Great game. Went down to the wire. I happened to be at Cam Williams' game, which is where Chancey Stuckey and Marcus Freeman were. So I wasn't able to make that game. But Friday meant a lot to the young man. I'll just leave it at that. Friday and what happened meant a lot to him. It meant a lot. And all I know is I talked to him Tuesday, and he was adamant that, just like some of the guys we talked about earlier, he's tired of the process. He's just not that kid, man. I've been telling people, like, he's a Midwest family kid. It's going to take him a lot to get him out of the Midwest. He cut his list of schools down to 8 because he was ready. Like, dude, I'm not dragging this out. And he did that quickly. No one expected that top 8 to come out on a Sunday, and it did. He just felt it and was like, man, I'm ready to cut it down. Friday happens. He gets to thinking about it. And just literally in the midst of us talking, he drops that on social media. So for him, it's about a feeling.
Which took everyone off guard, by the way. That was a very sudden.
When I talked to him, I think I got the vibe that he wanted to focus on his basketball season. Because they have a good enough team to go deep into the playoffs. One of his teammates is Phoenix Gill, who's a highly rated 25 kid, shooting guard, son of Kendall Gill.
Mm.
And he's being recruited by a lot of big time programs. So their basketball team is good enough to make a run in the state playoffs. So he wanted to focus on that. And he made that clear. But he also said that it wouldn't be long after he was done and took some visits probably that he would be ready to make a decision and to go from that on Tuesday to the visit on Friday and then later on that evening saying, you know what, you know. And I flat out asked him. I said, do you know where you want to go? And he said, yeah, pretty much. I'm close to it. So, you take that combination of information and you can piece it together however you want.
Yep.
He whatever vibe, I'll say this.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever he felt on Friday, it wasn't a negative. I can tell you that. It was extremely positive. So
Sean, I had someone message me on the message board, I believe, or maybe it was on Twitter, I can't remember, that said, is this bad timing for Notre Dame that he wants to make this decision after the coaches see him? I'm like, why would that be a bad thing? Right? Like, why like I definitely get more positive vibes about that, right? Yeah. So again, we'll see what the final result is on the 31st, but I think Notre Dame's in a good spot there, man. I think
they're in a very they were always in a good spot. Like, even look, we can be honest, even when Ryan and Brian were kind of like, man, I don't know. I just kept telling them, like, dude, look, Notre Dame's gonna be in the final group. Like, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Like, when it gets down to his final 3 schools or whatever, Notre Dame's gonna be right there. It should have been a blowout.
Well, that
favored Notre Dame, but we're here.
Yeah.
You learn your lesson.
That was always my point, Sean. And if Notre Dame does land Justin Scott, I'm still going to have the same viewpoint, right?
As you should, absolutely.
As
you should.
This was a kid that they needed to land. It was a kid that is an elite prospect in 2024, but they made it harder on themselves and they had to make it. Like that's my opinion. They made it harder on themselves. I do think they did, but if they land them, I don't care, right? Like, as long as they get them.
Doesn't matter if you win by 1 or 2, right? A win is a win, even in recruiting. Like, we barely won, we won. That's all that matters.
I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty, right? Like, right. Yes,
absolutely.
That's 100%.
You put up 50 points and you lose 50 to 51.
I want to win. I want to win at the end of the day. So,
absolutely.
Thank you, though, again for the super chat, Sammy. We're going to move on to another question from Peter Wyzanski. Is how I'm going to try to pronounce that. Said TJ Lindsay is 6'6", 260 pounds. He looks unblockable at the All-American week. Is there a reason he is not a top 100 recruit? So, Peter, a couple things on TJ Lindsay, because I was actually at the Junior Combine in San Antonio, was at the Alamo Dome during All-American Bowl week that TJ was at. So for the size, real quick for a conversation, I didn't see the official height on him, but I would say he's probably more 6'3.5", 6'4" than 6'6". But I mean, he's still long. He's still got good length, so it doesn't really matter. But he weighed in at like 290 pounds, man. This is an interior player, right? Like, he's going to be – I don't think we should talk about him in the big end conversation anymore, right? Like, that's a 3-tech, maybe a nose. Like, that's what TJ Lindsay is. Why is he not super rated? I mean, I think it's only a matter of time because he is getting offers from everyone, man. Like, the offer list is blowing up. I think it's just the fact that he plays at a really good school in Arkansas, Bryan High School. I mean, they won back-to-back state championships. They were undefeated this year, but it's still Arkansas, right? I mean, if he was playing at Georgia or Florida or Texas or something, he would probably be a little bit higher rated than he is, but his rankings are going in the right direction. He's a very productive player. Every place that I've seen him at, whether it's in a game or in one of the All-Star game settings that we saw at the Junior Combine, you see the talent level there, right? So it's only a matter of time before TJ Lindsay blows up, in my opinion. Only a matter of time. We had Sean. Here's an interesting one. So we just had this conversation, so let's keep having it, bro. I think it's a good conversation. From R. Ryden 42. Thank you for the question. How many defensive linemen do you think Notre Dame takes? And what do you think the final defensive line looks like on signing day? Lots of good on the board. So, Sean, I don't want to worry about the names as much right now. Well, actually, we could throw out a few names, but I don't want to predict what the class is 100% going to look like. I think the talking point that we need to have is what's the number of defensive linemen in the class? I have kind of said 5 is the number that I float on, but Brian was talking about it the one day, and he was like, could it get to 6? It's possible. So, I guess the start point is what's the number and what positions do they target out of that number? I think it's a good starting point.
I think January 31st goes a long way to that.
Yep.
January 31st will go a long way to how the numbers play out at Notre Dame. And I say that based upon how Justin Scott feels about how he's going to be used at Notre Dame. Right. Which tells me, based upon what he's saying, in the future, Notre Dame is going to fluctuate between a 3 and 4-man front, depending on the opponent. There might be weeks where you see him playing big end.
Which also, Sean, can mess up the numbers a little bit. Because if they're playing more 3-3 at some point, that Viper in Notre Dame's defense is technically a linebacker at that point, right? They're technically a linebacker that can also play on ball and do pass rush and stuff. So where does the commitment count, right? Are we counting that towards defensive linemen? Are we counting that towards linebackers? That's where it gets a little iffy, right? Because like Darius Hayes is a perfect guy, right? He's a perfect situation because if Notre Dame got him, he would probably be, if they're playing a 3-3-5, he would probably be that Sam linebacker who can also come up and rush. But am I counting him as a linebacker? Or am I counting him as an edge? That is the conversation piece. To your point. It's a great point.
So I think January 31st and getting Justin Scott is a must. And then it goes a long way to saying, well, we don't have to get a 6th guy because we have him. He's versatile. Let's say you go add another versatile guy. Let's say you add a Lindsey that you can see playing inside but still playing big end in some way, form, or fashion, or maybe another kid that has that versatility. Now you're establishing something that you clearly don't have right now, per se, in Groves, right? You're talking about getting like multiple guys on the interior that can also give you the flexibility to go to different fronts depending upon the opponent, which is important because of the schedule that Notre Dame plays.
I think it's really well said. So, just getting back to the numbers again, because I agree with you, Sean. It all starts with Justin Scott. Justin Scott allows you to be so much more versatile because he can play so many different spots on your line because he's got that length, he's got that explosiveness, he's got the size profile. I still think the number's 5, but it could get to 6. I still think that's where we are because, a few names that we're going to throw out here, right? We talked about TJ Lindsey. Owen Wafel's in the class already. He's more of an interior defensive lineman. Justin Scott's a guy. You want to talk about Benedict Ume as kind of a sleeper guy interior. I wouldn't say that he's a take right now for Notre Dame, but a guy they're keeping close eyes on. Jacob Smith and Jared Smith is kind of the defensive ends. Marquise Lightfoot out of Illinois as a Viper is a player that they have eyes on. And then Bryce Young is another guy that they have eyes on as well. So there's a lot of players, a lot of guys on the board right now. I think it's 5 to 6, and we'll see how it kind of plays out, man. Because again, I don't think Notre Dame's going to turn away football players that they like if they don't have to. So I think 5 to 6 is the number, and there's a few names that you need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and shout out to talk about versatility.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch the Ravens game last night?
I did. Yeah.
Shout out to Mike McDonald.
Yes.
And the way he used the versatility of his defensive line last night to set up one-on-ones. He was in his bag last night. And I was like, yo,
man.
I would love to see something like this at Notre Dame, the way he played tricks on the defensive line and late movement at the last minute into a different gap to, shift the offensive line that way. And now you got this guy one-on-one and you're bringing a blitzer on the outside. Man, he was in his bag, double R. He was in his bag last night.
He was, man. And, they kept that game a lot closer than it should have been with the injuries that they had and Lamar being out. And, they kept it a lot closer than and see the force. Yeah, what's that?
They should have won.
I mean, yeah, man, they were right in that conversation. I mean, because they had that stupid fumble at the 1 yard line or whatever
Yeah,
that Sam Hubbard picked up. So
right.
one time Notre Dame lacrosse commits Sam Hubbard, which is still so funny to say. But I mean, did you see that strip by Kyle Hamilton during the game, man?
That
That
was
was
a
a
big
wild
time hit.
play,
Big time
man.
hit.
Wild play. But yeah, but those are some names of the defensive line board. We had a couple super chats we want to get to here. Milton Fan, thank you for the super chat. Seems like with all the kids on the board and the likelihood Notre Dame lands them, the class could be the best Notre Dame has had in a while. Is that accurate or likely? Sean, likely that this is Notre Dame's best class in a long time.
It's going to come down to the big time kids, right? I think what this class has shown in Notre Dame, once again, is going to be able to get out early. I believe this is just me. I believe on the 31st, the Notre Dame fan base is going to feel pretty good. And I think that's going to set up a situation where you have two guys that are 5 stars, in my opinion, leading the way on both sides of the ball in recruiting. And we're talking about it still being the month of January. Like, you haven't even hit pot of gold yet. You haven't hit the blue and gold game yet. Then you haven't hit that springtime when the avalanche begins for Notre Dame, where they start to build up commits into the class. So it would be fantastic. Do they have an opportunity? Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, right now, I think currently they were number one right now, currently, because of Brandon Davis Swain decommitting. I think they sit at 3 or 4, depending upon the publication for the class of 2024. But they absolutely have an opportunity to get to that top 3 range. But it's going to come down to some of the big guys they're chasing.
Yeah, Sean, so the one thing I like about 247 Sports, there's not a lot I like about 247 Sports, but they have a class calculator, which is actually kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you can add players to a school's class and see what the point total will be at the end. I have a claim here. If Notre Dame lands Justin Scott at the end of the month, they keep everyone that they have, all 8 recruits that they have in the class right now, which includes a big-time quarterback in CJ Carr, Cam Williams, top 20 player in the class, according to 247. If you keep those players and you just land every player that you're in a good position for right now, that is actually a realistic football player in the class, Notre Dame will have its highest point total in 247 history. They will. So to Milton Fan's question, while everything looks right now, and if Notre Dame's able to maintain that momentum, yes, I believe this could be the best Notre Dame class in a long time. It would beat last year's class, 2023, from a point total perspective. And I think that if it finishes the way that it can, you're also going to hit a lot of the same pluses as far as a well-balanced class that 2023 had as well. And at the end of the day, you have a big-time quarterback, higher-rated player than what Kenny Minchie was last year. You have a wide receiver in Cam Williams that would be the highest-rated skill position player that you had in 2023. He's number 20 player in the country again. He's almost near consensus top 100 player across every major platform. You'd have Justin Scott, who is a 5-star defensive lineman, which unfortunately you were not able to finish with in 2023. Notre Dame, if they're able to maintain and to finish on the kids that they're in good to great position with, will have the best class that they've had in years. I think it's possible. I think it is possible. So
we're talking about a really good chance. Like, this isn't if this happens and this happens, and we're talking about a long shot. No, this is Notre Dame has a really good shot at being one of the top 3 classes in 2024. Like, really, really, really good.
Yeah. Man. Because, Sean, I really think that, so Notre Dame's first class this past year, 2023, that's Marcus Freeman's first full class at Notre Dame. That's kind of the standard now, right? I mean, and not the standard as in like that's the exact class you want to get to every year, but that's at worst what you want to get to every year now if you're Notre Dame, right? You have 280 whatever points from 247, number 8 class in the country, yada, yada, yada. Notre Dame now, I think, wants to take a step up, and I think they can.
Yeah.
I think they can. I really do. Because, again, I think we can't underrate the value of having a quarterback that is as highly rated as CJ Carr is in 2024, having Cam Williams with the bump that he's had, potentially getting Justin Scott. Those are 3 potential 5-star players at the end of the class, right? Those are 3 potential 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep. That's where we are. But it's a great question, Milton fan. Thank you so much. Appreciate you again. I'm going to move on to another super chat here from Uncle Junior, who said, a lot of drama on Notre Dame
Nice.
a lot of drama on Notre Dame managing players out. NCAA allows new coaches to push players off athletic scholarships and non-athletic scholarships. Thoughts? You have a thought, Sean? We get your thought here. I'm trying. I feel like I'm misreading it.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you were reading it a little bit.
I don't know if there's drama. This has been happening for years. So
yeah, I guess my question for Uncle Junior, and if you want to put it in the chat, like where's the drama coming from? I guess right because a lot of drama on Notre Dame managing players out, new coaches to push players off athletic scholarships onto non-athletic scholarships. I mean, yeah, it's happened. Like this isn't a new thing for one. And I guess my question is, where's this coming from, right? Like, where's the push coming from? Would be my greatest question. So I don't really know how to answer this one without like, just haven't seen this, right? Like, I don't know. I want to answer the question because it's a super chat, especially, but I just haven't seen this. So Uncle Junior, if you want to pop in exactly what you mean by that, or where the drama's coming from,
I'll put it like this: based upon the staff, I wouldn't consider it drama. Other people might think it's drama, but I think Marcus Freeman is one of the most transparent head coaches when it comes to his roster.
Yeah,
with his players. So whatever takes place, I'm pretty sure a conversation takes place face to face.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if there was just some like backhanded stuff that's coming from Marcus Freeman's side. Like he's just not that dude, man. Like Marcus Freeman strikes me as a person that is like overly honest about things, maybe when he shouldn't even be as honest, right? Yeah. Like that's what I see with him. So yeah, I don't know. We had Milton fan said, how is Marcus Freeman so good at recruiting? Is it relationships? I think it's partly. Well, I mean, one thing, Milton fan, I think the big thing for Marcus is that, I mean, one, he's a really good coach, right? As far as like his football minds, right? He's a very good football coach. He has a really interesting perspective on the game. He was a former top recruit coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Goes to Ohio State, was a very good player at Ohio State, gets drafted to the NFL, has an injury that forces him to retire early from the Chicago Bears. I mean, I don't even think he made the team that year because of the injury. Goes, does the grad assistant thing, becomes a defensive coordinator, head coach. He has worked his way up, and he's seen all vantage points, and he's a father too, right? A father of 6 children. So I think he's got every vantage point, and he's still a very young guy, which I think makes him super relatable to these kids, right? I think he understands what they like and what they feel, and I think he just has a really good understanding of the modern athlete, which I think helps him a ton. So I think Marcus Freeman is a really good builder of relationships. Absolutely. I also think, and Sean, you just hinted on this on the last question, Marcus Freeman's very honest too, right? Like he's transparent. Yeah. He's a guy that I think appeals to parents and is bringing back the culture of Notre Dame and, diving into the alumni base and all those good things. So I just think it's the relatableness of Marcus Freeman and the realness. And I think that he is a grinder at the end of the day, man. Like he gets on the trail, he doesn't stop. I mean, Sean, can we talk about if Justin Scott commits on the 31st, Marcus Freeman put in some work on that visit, man. He made that thing turn quickly, didn't he?
You dig? Man. Whatever he made, he made, you know what? Let me just go ahead and get the direct quote. Let me just get the direct quote here, Double R. It's Irish breakdown. It's what we do.
Sean's pulling up a direct quote for you all right now. Probably
Yeah,
hasn't even been published in an article yet, but here we go. Here we
yeah.
go.
Man, everything from how they're going to use me on the field to just not knowing that they were coming and seeing them. Man, today definitely meant a lot to me.
Directly from Justin Scott, 2024 defensive
It's
tackle.
like, dude, and then I got to witness it. I look,
Mhm.
I'm not overstating this. I promise you, I'm not overstating this. Dude is a rock star in coaching. Now he has to win double R because none of that matters
Mhm.
when it comes to unless you win. None of that matters. None of it. Like
Yep.
I can tell you right now, Ohio State is going to win pretty much regardless of what coach you put in there. Every coach at Ohio State has won, right? Ryan Day is like the most non-charismatic, boring dude you could ever. It's a lot of things you hear about him from recruiting. Just John
Yeah.
Harbaugh is goofy. He's just a goofy. He's a goofy guy. He was a goofy player. He's just a goofy. And the over the top things he did when he first got there, it's just like
I'm still waiting for Jim Harbaugh, Sean, in a press conference, that there to be a fly going past him and like his tongue just comes out and just like
and
gets it.
grabs
Like
it.
he's one of those dudes, man. He's weird. He's a weird cat. He's a really weird cat.
Now on the other end, I'm at the Glen Bar West game.
Mhm.
MF walks in, and you would have think, come on, dude. I'm sure they've seen college coaches come in the building. Yo, it was a buzz. Like, yo. Like a young man had his son dressed up in Notre Dame gear. And the young man told his dad, "This is the greatest day of my life." Because I took a picture with Marcus Freeman. So right now, the buzz, and it was Chicago. And I keep telling people, like, the buzz for Notre Dame right now in Chicago is absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
And I'm not overstating it. So when he walked in, it was like he's just, man, he's carried. This is what he is. He's a mixture of all the things that you need to be a really good coach. The
Agree.
only thing he hasn't done is win. If
Mhm.
he wins, if Marcus Freeman wins, he's going on a run.
Oh yeah. Oh
If he wins, all he
yes.
needs is one. It's going to
Yes.
be a problem. It's
Yes.
going to be a problem because he has every facet of being, he's charismatic. He's a great motivator.
It's a good looking
Motivator.
guy. Good looking guy. Yeah.
Very good looking guy.
Yeah.
Comfortable in his skin. Social butterfly.
Yes.
Commands the room. Right? And last but not least, you can trust him. Young men trust him when he talks. He's authentic. Whatever he said on Friday at St. Ignatius, it was Justice Scott trusts whatever was said.
Mhm.
He has, man, he has all facets. And he's very, in my opinion, he's very wise at a young age for a head coach. Like we've seen that the way he's reacted to situations on the fly. Like you could tell the wisest thing you can do is listen to counsel. Like
Mhm.
being wise is not always having the answers. The wisest thing you can do in life is seek out wise counsel from other people and putting other people that are smarter than you around you. That the wisdom that he has and trusting those around him and empowering those around him. And maybe you can say he did that to a fault early and
Mhm.
just gave too much away instead of realizing he was still the guy. But I mean, he has it all. And I'm not overstating that. I got
No.
to witness it in person. Like, yo, this packed gym was just like buzz. It was a different buzz as soon as they walked in the building.
Sean, there's a lot of coaches that I wouldn't want to hang out with, right? Like I wouldn't want to just like sit down and have a drink with some of these coaches because like you said, it just doesn't seem like they have personality or maybe just wouldn't be a good fit. Doesn't Marcus Freeman just kind of feel like he appeals to a lot of different personalities, right? Like I could see myself hanging out with him. I could see someone in a completely different walk of life hanging out with him. Like there's a relatableness to him, which I think that you kind of stated there, right? Like he gets it. Just gets it, right? And you're right, man. If he can win something, win a championship, it's a snowball, man.
It's going to be really dangerous at Notre Dame. And I think everyone else across the nation, they know that. Mm-hmm. They know, like, if he wins, we might be in trouble, fellas.
Yes.
We might be in trouble. I would love to, get a chance to sit down and talk to Marcus Freeman as we got haircuts. Because that's like one of the most notable, from a culture standpoint, even fans of other teams are like, yo, who cuts this dude's hair? Like his hair is always on point. And that's though it's the small things like that, man, that keep you relevant and keep your name on the mouths of people around the college football landscape. And that's something to some people that might be like, oh no, young people see that and this dude is always clean.
Yes.
Fresh fade. I would call it the fresh fade segment. Just me and Marcus Freeman sitting there getting cut by Julio and his partner and just chopping it up about Notre Dame football. That fade usually takes about 30 minutes. That'd probably be a good 30-minute conversation. That'd be dope.
But that's the point, Sean, is that I could drop Marcus Freeman into a barber shop, right? But I could also drop him into a CEO meeting at a major company, right? Or I could drop him into a football meeting room. Like he just fits kind of so many different avenues of life, right? Which again, I'm excited about the future, man. If he can win one, and it could get scary. It could get scary for a lot of people if that happens, but we'll see what happens. We had another super chat from Eero, says, mailbag, did you happen to get Owen Wafel's height and weight? Also, what position does he project at? So, Eero, I did not get a height and weight on Owen. I will do my best to do so. I hope that you're on the message board because I'll probably drop it in there when I do. I know he's listed at 6'3", 280. Now, I would say he's close to 280 for sure. He's a really filled out young man. He's probably more in the 6'2", 6'2.5" range than 6'3", but that's just kind of my guess just by looking at him. What position does he project at? I mean, Sean, I think that Owen Wafel ultimately is going to be a nose when all is said and done, but I think 3-tech nose early on will be his spot, but I think he's a playmaking nose at the next level potentially.
Really?
Yeah.
Over 3-tech? Okay.
So I don't think he has a ton of length. I think he's a little linear, right? Like 3 techniques, they have to kind of bend that track on a guard occasionally. And I don't know if that's Owen. I just want Owen to be like, dude, run that way as fast as you possibly can. Yeah. Like that's what I want Owen to do. He's more of a linear player than a flexible kid to me personally. And he's strong, dude. That kid does not miss a lift, man. I mean, just to put it easy like that, like he does not miss a lift. So I see him more at nose. I think you can make a case for 3-tech, though. I think you can play it.
Man, I hated weightlifting. Hated. Dude.
You were a basketball player. I've never met a basketball player that liked to lift weights. Never met one.
No, I had some on my team.
Yeah.
I love lifting. Yeah, but you know what? I take that back because they came from playing football into basketball. So that's why they lifted. Now I'll run the hallways and stairs for days. I have no problem doing that. Man, I'll run the hallways and stairs for days, man, to build up that endurance for the season. But yeah, when we started doing like leg presses and bench presses, like, man, I don't need this. I don't need this. Just let me go. Just let me play.
I need to take Sean to a squat rack, man. Get that stuff going.
Actually, that's my favorite thing to do.
Oh, really? Squatting?
I have naturally big legs. I have
Gotcha.
naturally big legs. Like I get it from my grandfather. I have wide shoulders naturally. Even when I was thinner, wide shoulders, bigger legs. So man, squatting. We used to do this one exercise on. It wasn't like a direct squat, but we would face backwards
Hmm.
from the squat and like step out as far as we could with one leg
Oh, like lunges?
and do
Yeah.
lunge squats. I
Hmm.
love that, bro. I used to love that because I used to kill that. I used to kill that. Yeah, it was certain things I liked, and then that bench press. It's like, man, that's for the birds, man.
I was a big deadlift guy, man. I was a big deadlifter. I love
Now,
deadlift.
see, that's something we never did that for basketball. We never did.
I have a
So
really embarrassing story, Sean. You want to hear an embarrassing story? People are going to love this one, by the way. So I was coaching track and field a few years ago,
okay,
and we were in the weight room, and one of the exercises we had was they were maxing out on deadlift that day. It was the end of
yeah,
a week. They were going to max out, and this one kid that I had was just a very a nudge, I guess is a good way to put it. He was a little bit of a nudge,
yeah,
and he had like 400 on the bar, I think, for deadlift or
yeah.
385, something in that ballpark. And he was like taking forever, man. I'm like, all right, let's go, let's go, let's do it. And he was just like, oh, don't rush me. He's like, you can't do this. I was like, oh, I can't. So I was like, put 400 on the thing. So put 400 on the deadlift. I was in dress pants, by the way. I went down, got the 400, locked it out. I went back down to put it down, and my pants split
Oh wow,
out of practice.
wow, wow, wow. Well,
So
I
this
mean,
is
that's really if you were going to tell me that something bad happened, that's the best outcome. Like,
yes,
okay, your pants split. It's a little embarrassing, but
a little
you
bit,
did it.
yeah.
You did it though. You
Oh,
said
I
you
did
would
it.
do it,
Yeah, no,
and you did it.
I got the 400 pretty easy, but my pants split in half, and then it was it was a pretty funny story to come home and tell my wife Caitlin that like what happened to your pants? We see. I got a little bit of a back and forth with a 17-year-old kid.
You know what? That
Mm,
explains everything. That
yes.
explains everything to me because I just had a conversation with Brian, and I was
Uh,
like, "Yo, I wake up every morning, and I am guaranteed a laugh from my boy Double R." Because there is going to be something posted around 7 o'clock in the morning where he's going at somebody's draft tape or he's ripping it down. Like it's guaranteed. Like he can't. It's almost like he can't help himself.
um,
It's just
I I was talking to someone on the phone yesterday for the first time ever, Sean, who covers Notre Dame, and he was like, "Oh, I love your presence on Twitter," and I was like, "Really?" A lot of people think I'm an a-hole, but I appreciate you so much for saying that.
no. He's spot
Mm,
on. Like your presence is needed because you are like the protector from
yes.
ignorant takes. Ignorant
I,
football takes. And some of us need protection from that. Some of the you pointed out, you're not going to let it just go quietly across the landscape of social media. You're going to call it out like over here, this is bad. Ignore this. So,
and now that I have a decent following on Twitter, I know I feel like a one of those people that just like shames people. But you guys go back to like when I first got on Twitter and I had like no followers. I've always been that way, man.
yeah.
Like I just don't
Yeah.
like
Oh,
bad information. I don't
it's
like bad
easy to
information.
see. It's easy to see. Like going
Yeah.
from that story to now, it's like, yeah, like you are ultra competitive, dude. Like,
Oh man,
yeah,
I hate losing, man. I hate losing. I hate
yeah,
losing.
yeah.
My last year as a thrower coach, someone I had a really good discus thrower, and he was like, you can't throw discus anymore." I'm like, "Oh, I can't. I can't. All right." And I won. So
So
yeah. So
there it
sorry for
is,
that
ladies and
tangent,
gentlemen.
but
He is the ultimate competitor.
I,
You'll never hear me challenging Ryan Roberts and, and telling him that he can't do anything. Like I already know he's coming back. Like, oh, you don't think so? You don't think so?
Oh man, I feel so bad for my daughter though. I'm never gonna let her win at anything, and I feel terrible about that. But next question, moving on here from Tiny Guns, Ryan. I'm going to need you to clarify your answer for the poll question on the board pertaining to the word. Sean, I'm gonna before I finish this question.
Mm-hmm.
There was a great poll by Tommy on the message board, which is why I love Tommy because it has nothing to do with football. But like, let's talk about how you say this word. How do you say GIF?
How do I say it?
How do you say it?
Depends on the day.
Oh, really?
But,
You changed?
but
Okay.
the majority of the time, I say GIF, like the peanut butter.
Interesting. I'm a GIF guy. I'm a
You're
GIF.
a GIF guy.
I'm a
So
GIF guy.
my daughter and my wife are GIF. They're GIF people as well. So
Let me
because
ask.
I'm around them, sometimes
Yes.
I just blend in because I know that's the way they say it.
Let me ask you a question, Sean, and I'm asking this to Tommy as well if he's listening. So if I spelled this word out for you, how would you say this word? Okay, GIFT.
Mm-hmm. Gift.
How would you say that word?
Gift.
Gift. So you just dropped the T and it's GIF. It's GIF.
That's very good logic.
It's I mean, I think it's decent logic. I mean, because like there's a couple words like I think like okay, so it's a hard G versus soft G conversation. So like giraffe is one where the G sound would come in, right? Gyro is another one that would come in. But I've always been taught that the G sound is dependent on how many different vowels are in this word, right? So anytime you only have one vowel in a word with a G, it's always the G, not the G. So it's like got.
Mm-hmm.
Gifts. I'm running out of words, but yeah. So I say gift, drop the T, you got a GIF. That's my opinion. But like you said, people pronounce it differently.
Look, pronounce it different, man. I know a lot of young people that prefer GIF, so I don't know why. I prefer GIF over Peter Pan, though, as far as peanut butters.
That's funny.
That's my preference.
Oh man, that's really funny. Man, I've been eating nothing but peanuts and peanut butter the last few days. By the way, I cut carbs, so I've just been eating peanuts, dude. It's been awful. It's been absolutely terrible.
You do dry roasted, or you do them in the shell or out of the shell?
I like the honey roasted. I like the honey roasted. Yeah.
I like to make a mess, so I like taking them out of the shell.
Yes.
Salted.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry about that little. I got. Man, now people are talking about the GIF thing, whatever. All right, we're moving on. Tommy, great question. Christopher Crosby with a question. He says, mailbag, Ryan, with the changes at Wisconsin and given who they hired as offensive coordinator, do you think it is more or less likely they can land Corey Smith, running back out of Wisconsin? I really want to see him with a blue helmet on. Sean, this is a fascinating question. It is. Because so for people that haven't followed along, Wisconsin, now with Luke Fickell, they hired the offensive coordinator from North Carolina, who is a air raid guy. And it is the big, I mean, can we talk about how much different that offense is going to be, man? You're going from a power running team, heavy personnel, to a air raid. That's what you're going to do down in Wisconsin. You know, I feel bad for Sean. I feel, well, not bad, because they still run the ball. It's not like they're never going to run the ball.
Yeah.
But their best player is that running back, man. Braylon Allen, he's their best player by far.
Fantastic.
And now they're going to start tossing the ball around a little bit, you know? But does it hurt them with Corey Smith? I wouldn't say hurt him. I mean, it hurts because Wisconsin was a heavy interest for him, and they changed coaches, right? Like that's where it hurts. I don't think it hurts the offense though, because you can look at Phil Longo's offense and be like, but like with Phil Longo, he did have Michael Carter and Javonte Williams that one year, and they were a dominant running football team, or a really good running football team, except for Notre Dame. So I don't think it hurts them in the sense that they're changing the scheme. I think it's just, a general hurt as in like you're changing coaches. So now you have to rebuild that relationship. I'll say this, Sean, I don't know if you agree with this. The longer this plays out, the less I feel good about Notre Dame with Corey Smith, because I feel like they were okay with him early, like they were in a pretty decent spot, and I just haven't had a good feeling about that one in a while. So I don't know how realistic Corey Smith is right now.
Yeah. I'm starting to come over. I used to be one of the guys that stood up for running backs as they began to be devalued in football. And I was one of the guys that stood up like, yo, running backs are incredibly valuable. Like,
Yes.
take a good one in the first round if he's there. And I've always been that guy. But now there are so many good ones. Dude, like, think about it. You grow up, the best kids, you playing throw it up at the park or out front with kids. Like, the
Mhm.
guy that was always the best was the best one that was running, that could run with the ball. Like, he was the best. He was the best running back out the group. And there's just so many kids that are athletically talented to be able to run the football across the country, right? And that's why you saw an offer go to Darian Dupree on
Yes.
Friday out of Chicago. Like,
Oh, Sean, I haven't talked to you about that kid, by the way. What are your thoughts on Dupree?
oh, he's fantastic. He is a fantastic. Um, he's not great at any one thing in particular, but he's really good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've seen this kid. I don't think I've seen a kid work harder at his game than him because I know what he was in eighth grade and a freshman coming into Mount Carmel. And now you look at his body, and even though he got injured at the end of the year in the playoffs, that kept him from finishing the season, but he's really built himself up. And I saw him dominate. Loyola Academy was ranked like in the top 25 in the nation, and they were number one in the state of Illinois. And then St. Ignatius, 2 games that he dominated. He dominated both games against the 2 best teams in the state of Illinois for Mount Carmel.
Did
And
he play? He played against St. Ignatius this year, or
yeah,
he did? Oh, yeah, he
yeah,
did. Yeah.
yeah. He played against St. Ignatius, and I was there, and I think I tweeted out like in the middle of the second quarter, like, "Yo, Darian Dupree, I'm here to see Justin Scott, but Darian Dupree is dominating this game. He's dominating out of the backfield, running the ball. Like, he can really do everything. And I think the work that he put in, don't take it lightly. He has a
Mhm.
great relationship with Dylan McCullough that was developed at the Irish Invasion last year, and he talks about that, like what he took from the coaching he got from Dylan McCullough at the Invasion, and how he took that into the season, and that offer meant the world to that young man on Friday. It really did. It meant the world to him. So, you know how these things are. You get an offer, but at this point, I think Alabama offered him as well.
Yes.
So,
They are they're coming, man. They're coming. The offers are coming for Darian Dupree, who is
yeah,
not.
he,
I mean,
his
he's rated by one platform as like the one. I think it's Rivals that has him as like the number 156 player in the country, but
mhm,
everybody else has like a 3-star rating on him. So he's still a
yeah.
little bit underrated from a recruiting ranking
Yeah,
perspective.
he, in my opinion, he is. If you watch his film,
Hmm.
specifically from his junior year, uh, Malik Zaire said he reminds him of Theo Riddick.
It's interesting. It's
I think
interesting.
he saw the number 6 on his back, and he was like, "Oh man, he's kind of like Theo," because like Theo would run hard in between the
You,
tackles to be that.
you know who he kind of reminded me of was I thought I got some Tyrion Folston out of him, man, because
Mm,
that was like the thing you mentioned, right? He has a low center of gravity and he
mhm.
has some crazy contact balance, man. Like he
Yes,
does not get put on the ground too easily.
no, and then when he gets out, he doesn't run a 4.2, but once he gets out into the open, he's leaving people. He's not
Yeah.
getting caught from behind. So he's just a really solid running back. If you had him next to Aeneas Williams, you have 2 running backs that are crazy versatile. And you add
Yes.
them to Jeremiah Love in the passing game, the things that Tommy can do out of 21 and other stuff, crazy.
Because
Crazy.
that's like, I mean, because right now, I think Aeneas Williams can run between the tackles, but he's much more of a let's get him out on the edge, throw
Mhm.
him the football. Darian Dupree's he's an inside runner, man, even
Yeah,
though he's only 190 something pounds right now. I mean, he'll be 205, 210 and be a powerful back, though. But
mhm.
if Notre Dame's able to land Darian Dupree, I'd be happy about it. I mean, Corey Smith is fantastic, right? Like he's
Absolutely.
incredible speed.
Absolutely.
But I would personally love Notre Dame to land that guy on the board. There's a couple other running backs, though. I mean, Anthony Carey's a really talented kid out of Florida. The running back board is not hurting, is the point. Like, it's not a one player or nothing type of conversation. And Dupree certainly deserves to be in there. So,
and it's, you know what else? I'll say this. Malik was like, when you watch his film, he might be the most natural runner.
Yes. Brian said that, and I agree completely. He has really good vision, really good contact balance. He is a true running back.
Mm-hmm. And that, that's the type of stuff that goes back to just playing out in front of the house with your friends, man. And just the natural, innate ability. His stop-start is something else. If you watch his film where you're like, yo, he's elusive. Like, he runs hard. He doesn't walk away from contact. He takes on the contact. He has good contact balance. He's physical enough, has enough speed, but then he's shifty. He can make you miss. Lateral movement, and then once he makes the move, it's almost like not in the same style, but his lateral movement shiftiness, it made me think about LaShawn McCoy almost. Like, he has that ability to just make you miss, and then once he misses, like, it doesn't take him a long time to get started again. And that's a gift. That's a gift.
No, it really is. It's an innate ability to understand the flow of running the football, and he gets that. He definitely gets that.
Like, have you ever watched a kid run zone, and you're watching, and you're like, "Oh, cut it back," because you're watching on TV and you see the backside opening up, and it takes gifted guys not only to be able to see it, but to trust that they can bend back to it, right?
Yes.
So he reminds me as one of those kids that can see it, but also trust himself to be able to do what he needs to do to hit that hole.
And I coached running backs for a couple of years, Sean. That vision is so hard to teach to kids. It really, in zone, like either you understand spacing and you have spatial awareness, or you don't sometimes. I mean, that's what I had a really good running back when I coached, and he ran for 1,000 yards each of his last 2 years, the high school that I coached. But he just didn't understand the zone flow. Like, he just didn't get it, right? So we had to change our offense to more of like a gap power scheme, because like then he knows I need to go to the 3-hole. I need to go to the 4-hole. He needed a designated hole. He didn't understand flow on how to run zone, which is a little tough sometimes. But yeah, I think Darian Dupree does have that, though. I agree. We had a question from Jeff Fluke. Can Carter Nelson project any other position? Feel like we are in on a lot of tight ends. Jeff, could he play wide receiver? Sure, if he wanted to, but I think his body's he's going to be 240, 250 before you know it, because he's got a body that just can put on a lot of weight, in my opinion. So, I think he's a tight end, but could he play some wide receiver? Could he be like Ed McCaffrey? Sure, but I just don't think that's not the highest upside to him. He's a mismatch weapon against linebackers and safeties, in my opinion.
You just made Brian happy, boy. You mentioned Ed McCaffrey.
Easy Ed, baby. who is the coach at Northern Colorado, apparently. So, yeah, there you are. Great question, though. We're going to go to Brandon Plisner has a question here. It's a mailbag. Are there any realistic 2024 targets Notre Dame is in the mix that could mainly play Will or Rover? So, Brandon, I'll be very honest. The linebacker recruiting so far, at least the board, is something that we're still trying to figure out 100%, because there's a lot of names, a lot of different body types and styles. I mean, and right now, again, we feel good about Peyton Pierce, but everybody else is kind of figuring it out. Like I sorry, Sean.
No, I was clearing my throat. I'm sorry.
Oh, gotcha. No, you're good. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you. So, I think like Tylen Singleton, for one, is a guy that could play Rover. He's a safety type, but like he could be a Rover down the line, right? I think that you're looking at guys. Honestly, man, like, we've talked a lot about in the past Gabriel Williams. I don't know if they're pushing for him out of Maryland. I think he would be an ideal Rover type. Zaquan Patterson, I think, could play some Rover stuff. The Rover board's a little odd right now. It really is, because I think that mean, they were high on Garrett Stover. Again, Notre Dame came down between Ohio State and Notre Dame. He opted for Ohio State. That would have been the ideal rover in the mix, but I just think it's a little tough right now to project that. So linebacker is definitely a position that it's gonna take a little time to start to figure things out a little bit. We're gonna go now to Brandon has a couple questions back to back. So he said, Ryan, if Pierce is the Mike, what would Hayes start out if he picked Notre Dame both at Mike? Sean, where would you start Darius Hayes at? First day in camp, if Notre Dame gets a Darius Hayes, where is he playing on a defense? Again, we're talking about 6'4", 210-pound linebacker Viper out of Largo, Florida.
Probably a Viper.
Think so? Just from day one? Just get him in?
Yeah, probably a Viper. Because you're talking about making the game easy, right? At Viper, I would definitely tell you there's probably a lot less responsibility of things to learn for a freshman than starting inside at linebacker and going to Viper, where, most of the time you can just be an athlete and just go play and then take your time and learn the game, and then you can move inside or move to that linebacker situation. I think we've seen Clemson kind of take that approach, getting the athletes on the field, putting them at the rover position, and then transferring them inside once they learn the game.
Just saw that with Trenton Simpson, who made that move. We saw that they were trying to do that with Mike Jones, but he transferred to LSU. Isaiah Simmons was another kid that played that kind of displaced Sam overhang role as well, to your point, Sean.
So, yeah, I mean, I would probably start him out at the Viper. And then, either keep him there or, hey, you have so much depth in the linebacker room that it might not be a need.
Right. He might be I've been wrestling with this one, honestly, because I part of me does want to just throw him at Viper and just let his body develop. But I might start him at Will. He might be a Will, because I know it's a little bit odd that some people will be like he's 6'4" or whatever. But if you watch Darius Hayes, the best plays he makes are working in pursuit, man. That kid can flat out run. So I would maybe start him out at Will, and then if his body develops quickly like everyone thinks it will, which will very possible, then you move him to Viper. But I definitely think it's Viper's probably, because that kid is 6'4" with vines, Sean, and he is going to fill out just in a snap of a finger, man. He's going to be 245 plus pounds, probably within a couple years. He's not that type of body. So I think he's a Viper long term. And Brandon, I know you had a question about Peyton Pierce. Yes, Peyton Pierce is a middle linebacker at the next level. I don't think he's a Will at all. I think he's a middle linebacker strictly. We had Milton Fan who said, mailbag, how does Notre Dame look for Mike Matthews? What position you see him playing? Mike Matthews, athlete out of the state of Georgia, considered a 5-star by multiple outlets, 6'3", 190 plus pounds. Mike Matthews is being recruited by Notre Dame to play safety. I said this on the board, or it might have been my mailbag last week or this week. I think that there's intrigue from Mike Matthews about Notre Dame. I think that he says all the right things about Notre Dame. I think he likes Notre Dame. I think that for there to be any realistic chance that he'll have to get here to the spring or summer to see if there's legitimate interest, because I think it's a pipe dream at the moment, if I'm being completely transparent, right? I think that he's a kid that's going to end up in the SEC most likely. Really talented kid, plays offense and defense for his high school. Stupid athlete, man. Mike Matthews is a freak of nature. So I think there's interest in Notre Dame. If he actually gets on campus over the next few months, then maybe my mindset will change a little bit, but I just don't think it's super realistic with Mike Matthews right now. Had from Bobby Hallfark. Bobby, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Please put it in the chat. My apologies. Mailbag, with the class coming in and already there, it's 2023 class, I'm assuming is what you're talking about. With the players we already have, what's the chance of a 11 or maybe undefeated season this year? Love to hear your guys' opinion. Bobby, I even talked about this before last season. Someone asked, what's the more realistic opportunity for a national championship? 2022, 2023, 2024. My answer was 2023, and it's still there. I think that Notre Dame has a chance to be very good this year because you look at the pieces they have in place. Really good offensive line coming back, really good running back group. Wide receiver room just got deep all of a sudden. Linebacker was solid to good last year, and I think they'll take a nice step forward under a second year defensive coordinator. But with Sam Hartman now in the mix and a little more certainty at quarterback, I think Notre Dame has a chance to be a very good team this year, man. I do. I think they can compete for a national championship next year. So we'll have all the offseason to talk about where they're going, what they need to do, how they match up against certain teams, all that good conversation. But I do think that Notre Dame has a legitimate chance in 2023. But it's a great conversation that I look forward to having. Brandon Plesner asks, if I can get up, there it is. Mailbag. Could you see Notre Dame taking 4 offensive linemen instead of 3 if they get Lamberts, that is Gerby Lamberts, Caleb Brewer, and Styles Prescott to join Peter Jones? Sean, I mean, we've talked about this, right? We've talked about it probably being a smaller offensive line class. I think the number's 3, more than likely. I think you have Peter Jones, who's probably a guard, maybe a center. We'll see. But then you have spot for 2 true offensive tackles. My question is, though, to you, Sean, because we talked about tight ends, maybe take an extra guy. If you were there, if you were Harry Houston and this staff, and all of Gerby Lambert, Caleb Brewer, and Styles Prescott all wanted to come to Notre Dame, would you take all 3?
I would venture to say yes. I mean, I can't say yes for the tight end conversation we had and then say, go the opposite direction when it comes to O-line. And the tackle types, right? I think they have a clear plan for 24 and what they're looking for. And athletic tackle types, true tackles. And I think that's what they're going to get. I mean, Lambert is very high on Notre Dame. They already have Jones. Prescott kid, local kid, more than likely is going to have Notre Dame at the top of the list. I really think they're going to have their pick here. I think they're going to have their pick for the type of guys that they want. And the numbers might be small, but the impact long-term might be really, really big.
Can I say this, Sean, and tell me if you disagree or agree on it? So you have Peter Jones in the class, obviously, at this point. Gerby Lambert's the number 1 guy on the board for me at offensive tackle. You take him, and I think things are in a good spot with Gerby Lambert. You take him. That's your guy at offensive tackle. I would also take Caleb Brewer every day, including Sunday. Like, he is that dude for me, man. 6'5", 300 pounds, has played high school tight end and defensive end, and is still developing. But I would take that kid every second because he is a very good athlete and an all-state wrestler. I would take Caleb Brewer. The question for me at that point is, do you push to 4 with Styles Prescott? That's the question for me. That's where it would be for me. I'm not saying that's where it is for Notre Dame. That's where it would be for me. So my answer is, Brandon, I think it's a possibility with how the board's expanding now that it could go to 4. But again, man, at some point, the numbers can't keep going up at every position, right? Because then you're not going to sign everybody.
Because last Monday, we actually counted out and settled on 23 in the class.
Yeah, 23 to 24.
23 to 24
somewhere there.
Class. Yeah, so we keep adding 1 per room. Now you're getting up to like 27, 28, and you can't.
And we expect a smaller class right now, Sean, but then like with transfer portal stuff, you never know, man. Maybe the numbers change quickly. Like it can change so quickly. It's weird. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. But I mean, Brayden, I think 3 is absolutely the number. I think it could get pushed to 4, though. It's possible. It's possible. And somebody in the chat that isn't apparently a Caleb Brewer fan, enlighten me. What do you not like? I mean, I see a large kid, nasty blocker, good athlete. I'm just a little confused on what you don't see there. Little confused there. All right, let's move on. We'll move to Colin, then back to Brandon. Said, Sean and Ryan, do you guys think Justin Scott could be a recruiter like CJ and Cam for the offense? So, Sean, I mean, this question obviously is spurred off of the fact that he would be the biggest defensive recruit on that side of the football for Notre Dame. So, you've talked to Justin obviously a lot more than I have. So, do you think that his personality could be that type of recruiter?
I was just about to say he's a personality. Like he is a personality. You watch him play basketball. You ever seen the big dude that he's Justin Scott. So the other team knows who he is. They know he's a big time football recruit, right? So I'm watching this other team. This one kid like hit a shot in his face and was talking to him, like running down the court, and Justin's just laughing, you know. And he's like the verbal communicator on defense to the entire team. Like he's the guy they look to. And then, he's standing on the free throw line and you see the kids from the other team talking to him. Like he's just that kid. Like he's very engaging and people are drawn to him and not in a negative way or trash talking way. Like you can't, like, even if you try to trash talk him, the most he's going to do is probably like laugh, turn it around on you and make you say, you know what, this guy is pretty cool. He's a pretty cool guy.
Yep.
So yeah, he is a personality. So can I see him being that type of guy? Absolutely. Like, and they all have their little things, like Cam Williams with the little trolley thing. Like he loves trolleys. So he's constantly putting trolley stuff. And Cam's weird, right? He loves bucket hats. I think when he showed up Saturday, he had on sweatpants, but he had the tube socks over the sweatpants. Brian Driscoll told me so. they're all personalities in their own different way.
They are. They are. Can I just say this, Sean? For Xander Cruz that is in the chat, I asked what you don't like about Caleb Brewer, and he came back with 3-star. Sir, we don't do that in this chat, sir. Tell me what you don't like about his film, please. Tell me what you don't like about his talents. Right. I'm not doing the 3-star thing. I'm not doing that, man. I'm just not. Because there's so many players that I could look at this time during the season. Kyle Hamilton at this point in his junior year was a 3-star. Joe All ended his career as a 3-star. I don't want to hear about that 3-star garbage. I asked you, what don't you like about his film? What don't you like about his talent? Tell me what you don't like, and then we can have that conversation. I would love to have that conversation. Would love to. But I'm not going to respond to he's a 3-star. So, this film's good. Man, all right. Yep, I'm moving on. These responses are just wild, man. Go watch this film.
Basically the same competition that Blake Fisher had?
Yeah, he plays in Pennsylvania. He played at Wyomissing. That just developed a national recruit offensive.
I thought he was talking about Prescott. He's still
talking about. No. I'm talking about Caleb Brewer. And now I'm getting that he's an interior offensive lineman. What is that based on? He's playing offensive tackle this year. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, and the kid can move. Why are we assuming that he's an offensive guard or an interior player? I have not. I don't get that. I don't get that inkling that he's just strictly an interior offensive lineman. He's even told me that they're recruiting him as an offensive tackle, and then if he moves inside the guard eventually, that might be a thing. So I think offensive tackle's on the table. So sorry, but and also saying that he plays against weak competition is also still not saying anything about what you don't like about him. I want to hear what you don't like about him. Does length bother him? Is he not a great athlete? Is he a mess? Does he get too wide in his tell me something that you don't like about him.
This goes back to, let me add this. This goes back to, I think we discussed this, not us, myself and Brian.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw the video where Josh Pate was defending, what's the kid from Iowa that eventually flipped to Alabama, Caden Proctor.
Uh-huh.
And he was defending the uproar that says, Alabama pays players to come to Notre Dame. To come there, and that's how that flipped guys. And he's like, have you looked at, the first round over the last 10 years for Alabama players, Alabama offensive linemen? That's why these guys go to Alabama. They don't have to pay players. And,
Right.
I was like, this is my pushback. And this kind of answers the 3-star thing and whatever Xander feels about his film.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a guy like Harry Heastan, you know what you can say? Say, you can put all the players you want in the first round. Most of the guys you put in the first round end up being terrible in the pros.
Right.
A long list of Notre Dame tackles that were in the playoffs this week, killing it. And literally 2 of the top 5 offensive linemen in the league are from Notre Dame, Harry Heastand products. Oh, by the way, Ronnie Stanley played last night as well. It might be 3.
Right.
So, and you go to Iowa and Notre Dame produce better products along the offensive line than Alabama does when we're talking about going to the NFL. They might not put more in the first round, but when it comes push to shove and how they produce on the NFL level, Iowa and Notre Dame produce better players. And this is what Notre Dame tells you. Like Harry Heastand is telling you what he can produce with this kid. If he's offering the kid, he knows what he can do with the kid. Doesn't matter what I like or what you like about the film.
Right.
The proof is in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
He can produce NFL linemen. Period. That's what he does. That's what he does. 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. Nobody thought Quentin Nelson was going to be the beast that he ended up being in Notre Dame. Nobody thought that. But once again, you look at the playoffs and you look at Aaron Banks, McGlinchey, Eichenberg, Ronnie Stanley, Zach Martin. Like, just look at all of the great Notre Dame players and linemen that are in the playoffs, and go find other than Evan Neal, go find the Alabama ones.
Mm-hmm.
Go find the Alabama offensive lineman for them. So you can look. You talk 3-star, 4-star. Harry Heastand knows what he wants and he knows what he's looking for, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters. So if he wants him and he's on his list, then obviously he sees something that your eye is not trained to see. His eye is trained to see it.
Mm-hmm.
If he thinks he can play tackle, it really doesn't matter what we think, right? Because we have opinions that you talked about with Prescott.
Yeah.
Right? But obviously, Harry sees something that he feels like he can knock it out.
Yep. And that's the wonderful part about evaluation is you're not going to hit 100 on it, right? I mean,
No.
I'm going to miss. I'm going to hit. Harry's going to miss. He's going to hit. Everyone's going to hit and miss. Just, yeah.
He hits a lot more.
Oh, man.
He hits a lot more than most people.
Yeah, and now we have people talking about the Monroe Freeling recruitment, and they're getting the information completely wrong. So, Xander, I'm sorry, but you are very misguided on a lot of things that you're saying in the chat. Not a lot of it's not true. So, yeah, let's move on. Let's move on. But yeah, leave what you want. Super chats from Kevin Carter. I'm getting a little frustrated, Sean. My bad. Ryan, Sean, what are the characteristics you look for in an ideal defensive lineman? Size, body type, length. Do you want 6'5", 270 pounds with 70-inch wingspan, for an example? Kevin, to start the conversation, it would be what position are we talking about, right? Defensive line is it's very broad, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a 4-3 team, I want a nose guard that has a little bit more of a physical, dense lower half, 300 plus pounds. 3 tech could be a little bit longer than a nose tackle. A little more flexible. Length is a little more important at that point. So I need height and length for a 3 tech. Defensive end wise, for me, if I'm a 4-down team, 6'4" plus, I want 33.5 plus inch arms. 33.5 is kind of the cutoff for me. 3-4 defensive linemen are a completely different animal, because then you're talking about you want length for days. Like you want the Stephon Tuitt's of the world and 290 plus at those 2 defensive end spots, nose tackle, a little more dense, a little bit more of a 6'2", 6'3", 325, 330-pound guy who can kind of anchor at the point of attack. So for me, Sean, it's an imperfect question, imperfect answer. I would honestly rather put it in kind of a article format, because depending on what system you look for, Kevin, depending on what position you're talking about, it's all going to look different, and look different for coaches too sometimes. So,
yeah, for me, you look for no-brainers.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Scott's a no-brainer. Keon Keeley was a no-brainer. Like, forget measurements. Just go find the no-brainers,
Mhm.
right? And then once you find the no-brainers, it's like, okay, now we can start searching for a body type. Because Mike Elston had a body type that I felt like Mike Elston was pretty successful with the development of the body type, whether it's Adi or some of the other, the Aquaras. Like, he was pretty well with that body type and developing them and getting them to produce and ultimately getting all of them to the NFL. So, as a coach, what are you looking for? What are you comfortable being able to develop and to bring the best? And like I said, Justin Scott, he's a no-brainer. Like,
Yep.
he's a no-brainer. He's a kid that is going to come in and make an impact as a freshman,
No
right?
doubt.
And you mix in no-brainers with developmental pieces. And what's the kid that was backing up Jalen Carter? Because Jalen Carter was backing up. Was he backing up Wynn or was he backing up Jordan Davis last year?
So he wasn't. I think the 3-man front last year was they had Jordan Davis at nose, they had Jalen Carter, and then they had Devontae Wyatt as the other defensive
Right.
tackles inside.
So
Yeah.
the Bear kid that was backing him
Oh,
up.
Bear Alexander. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
dude, it's like, okay, yeah. You watch him play in the national championship game, and you're like, yep, he's gonna be the next dude. Like, it's just certain kids that are no brainers, So
Or they. I mean, the talent that they have on that defensive line at Georgia is just stupid, man. Because then they bring in like Warren Brinson, and he's
yes,
like immovable in the
immovable.
national championship.
And it's
Like,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like you said, you try to get as much as those no brainers as you can, and then you start looking for. In my personal opinion, I think Harry approaches it that way, right? I think
Yep.
Harry gets no brainers along the offensive line, and then Harry loves getting guys that everyone might not see what he
Mm-hmm.
sees, but he
Yep.
believes in the way he teaches.
Exactly.
And if I can get this guy in my system, I know he's going to end up being a really good player for us. You know,
No doubt.
And
All right, let's roll through a couple more and then let's finish this out. So we had Robert Bishop just said, is Brendan Vernon an early enrollee? No, he is not. He will be there in June. Brandon Plesner just asked, Ryan, did you or Brian receive any info from Junior Day regarding the Smith twins' height and weight, like we did for Bryce Young? Because I'm skeptical. Brandon, I talked about this a little bit in the show, but I just wanted to quickly go over it. Jacob Smith was 6'4", 227 pounds. Jared Smith was 6'3.5", 245. So those were the Smith twins on Junior Day. We had Jordan Z. I'm not going to pronounce your last name, Jordan, because I don't want to disrespect you. Sean and Ryan, random question. What's normal communication look like between a player and staff? Is it daily, weekly, etc.? Just curious what's normal versus what's too much and little. I think it really depends on the player, Sean. I mean, there's some kids that you want to stay on them every single day. And multiple people in the staff are going to reach out to them. There's some kids that are every other day. There's some kids that you could just check in on once a week, and that's good for them, right? There's some kids that like a lot of communication. There's some kids that do not like a lot of communication. So I think it's just more about feeling out what works best for the player.
read the room, right? That's what coaches have to do. Read the young man. And like you said, you just broke it down perfectly. Some kids are good with once a week. Some kids, you need to stay on them a lot, maybe daily. And like you said, maybe we looked at certain things that we've discussed recently with certain recruits that we found out the difference in between the communication. It's like you have siblings, right? So if you have siblings, you might feel like one sibling gets more attention than the other, not thinking that that sibling might need that extra attention and you might not, right? Because you're good doing your own thing. And, when you come from recruiting, that individual might need that extra attention. You might look at it like, man, why are they talking to him more than they're talking to him?
Right.
But you just broke it down. That might be needed for that particular individual, and that might not be needed for the other individual. So, yeah, you said it perfectly.
Tommy Guns wants us to come out to a football game, Sean. It's Sean and Ryan. Valdosta, Georgia is coming up to Ohio to play the Massillon Tigers. Yeah, Massillon is how you pronounce it, Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
And in week 1, y'all should definitely make an appearance. Sean, that's all you, man. If you want to go out to Ohio, it's all you, man. I'm good.
If I go with Malik, then I'll be good.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I'll never go to Ohio without somebody from Ohio.
Tommy, if you want to pay for my airfare or pick me up in the rig on the way down, we can make that work, all right? We can make that work. Last question, Sean. It's actually a comment from K. Grant, our guy with the super chat. Just said, no question for mailbag. Just want to show some appreciation for you guys. Go Irish. K. Grant, we appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for that super chat. Sean, that's going to end it for us here, man. We rolled through a lot of questions, a whole lot of questions. Got to some tremendous mailbag here. I hope everyone enjoyed this show, as it was definitely educational. So appreciate you all so much. Before you leave, if you can just hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Appreciate you all for the podcast. A lot of great energy in the show today and a lot of crazy energy as well. So hit that like button, subscribe, notification, all that great stuff. Join the message boards, boards.irishbreak.com. Join us tonight, 6 o'clock, for IB Nation Sports Talk with Sean Stiers and Vince D'Addario. You can also hit that 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform for me and Sean. I am Ryan. Thank you all so much for joining the Irish Breakdown Podcast.